Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto inherited Hirashin from his father before the Chunin exam bloodline part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. 8 o'clock at night. It was the 10th day of October and the night sky was dark thanks to it being the night of the new moon. But still the people of Konoha were cheering, drinking and celebrating Takami because they were thankful for surviving the attack of the Kyuubi no Kitsune 6 years ago. And speaking of the Kyuubi, the host of the beast was currently running through the streets of the village. Moving in a zigzag formation to dodge the rocks, kunai, shurikens, and other various knives that were being thrown at him. The child has blonde hair, electric blue eyes and 6 whisker marks on his cheeks, 3 on each. He was wearing a sleeveless dark red shirt and jet black shorts with black sandals he stole from a civilian child. He looked behind him to see about a dozen shinobi chasing him since he had already outrun the civilian mob that was chasing him. Every now and then, some civilians would join the chase or try to cut him off, only to be left behind or ran over. What's the matter, can't catch a 6-year-old? Naruto yelled behind him before laughing, putting his 6-year-old legs into overdrive as he cut into an alleyway, surprising his pursuers. After entering the alleys of Konoha, the boy was able to cut into more and more alleys, forcing his pursuers to jump to the roofs to keep up with him. The Jounins and Chunins in the mob cursed themselves for not knowing the layout of their own village like the back of their hands. The amount of missions outside of the village forced them to know layouts of other villages, and since they never had a use to explore the alleys of their own village, well, you could see the result of their negligence. Though Naruto was without the knowledge of how to use chakra properly and about the beast inside of him, he continued to dash through the alleys, unconsciously using chakra in his legs and moving as agile as a fox itself. Suddenly he encountered a dead end and before he could run out of the alley, his mob caught up to him. He turned and glared at the crowd. "Do you really think you caught me?" he said, bursting out in laughter before he started calming down. "Think again, go ahead, do your worst," he said as they started doing the same hand seals. The blonde began to suffer from anxiety for a while as he hoped his plan would work. Suddenly a burst of adrenaline worked its way into his system and he burst into action as they all took a large inhale and exhaled large fireballs that converged into one very big one. The fireball hit the back wall and the explosion shook the area, and since the shinobi were distracted, they didn't notice the sizzling of multiple exploding tags on the side walls of the dead-end alleyway. However, one lucky and experienced Jounin's danger sense went off and he was lucky enough to shunshin out of the area just in time to escape a very large and fiery explosion. He looked from a roof and swore about the loss of 11 Jounins and Chunins. He was about to exit the area when a squad of Anbu appeared behind him, grabbed him, and took him to a bicky for a little talk. The Sandame Hokage, Saratobi Hiruzen, stood in the middle of the destroyed alley, the fire around him not bothering him a bit. A team of Anbu were currently putting out the fires before they had any more time to spread. "Where are you, Naruto-kun?" Saratobi thought to himself as he turned on his heel and begun to walk back to his office, a frown marring his face. Meanwhile the blonde was walking through the sewers of Konoha. The nasty and murky water was up to his knees, wetting the bottom of his shorts. "Ugh, it stinks down here," he thought to himself as he started jogging through the water, happy that he survived another year. "But I guess I can't be mad at the smell of victory." He saw a small speck of light and ran to it. After climbing up the ladder, he, with a lot of difficulty, moved the heavy object from out of his way. He rose his head and realized the light was in front of Ichiraku's ramen stand. They were closed now and he was glad because right now he was tired and he stunk and he didn't feel like being a sitting duck while enjoying a big bowl of ramen. Not to mention they were never open on his birthday because they didn't want him getting tempted to have a bowl of ramen and end up getting beat out of his senses. He yawned and trudged his way home, keeping to the shadows. Before long he was in his little apartment, not minding how it looked on the outside. The old man Hokage gave him this apartment a little over a month ago. When that happened his neighbors moved out and the Hokage gave him the deed to the apartment so that he didn't have to pay any rent. He laid on his bed and smiled at the ceiling. Another year gone by, another set of fools getting schooled. He smirked to himself for planning the perfect scenario for the mob. If it was under a different scenario, he might have felt a little remorse for killing 11 people. But to be fair, they were ready and willing to take his own life if he was caught, which he nearly was. If that's the most those Jounins and Chunins could do, then I'm going to be the best ninja this village will ever produce," Naruto said before he drifted to dream world as the next 6 years literally flew by quickly. 6 years later, beep beep, the blonde awoke to the sound of his alarm clock. With unimaginable speed, he destroyed the clock and sat up in his bed. He walked to his dresser and looked at the clock on it. 5 o'clock just like always. He did his routine, take a shower, brush his teeth and get dressed and then have some toast and bacon. He wore a black sleeveless muscle shirt, dark green pants with the ankles tapped. He had long since ripped the sleeves off of his shirt because, in his opinion, it looked way more cooler that way. His blonde hair was long like the Yondaime Hokage's, and his electric blue eyes became more mature and hardened these past 6 years. Over his muscle shirt was a dark green Chunin vest he took from the latest Chunin that attacked him just last night. Flashback 9 o'clock at night. Naruto had decided to finish training a little later than he usually would end it and started to walk out of the training ground. He had to go to the academy the next day, considering that the next day was a Monday. He knew the graduation exam was going to be this Friday. He had kept his skills as secret as he possibly can. Even when the Hokage came to the class to give a surprise graduation exam, he had to practically do his worst in order to fail. The village wasn't ready to see how strong he truly was. But even though he wanted to lay low, that didn't mean he was going to be the dead last of the class. He was second place, only trailing behind Uchiha Sasuke, the stuck-up duck-haired emo kid in class, by 1 point thanks to their latest shuriken test. The bastard had scored a perfect 10 on the kunai test and a 9 of the shuriken. So he had to score a 9 on his kunai and 9 on his shuriken. He didn't care because the blonde couldn't be beat into jutsu thanks to his bloodline that allowed him the speed he needed when he was in an emergency. And speaking of emergencies, his danger senses told him to disappear as a volley of kunai and shurikens were headed his way. And disappear he did, pissing the thrower of the projectiles off. Naruto reappeared back in the same spot and looked around the field. "Show yourself, coward," Naruto said out loud, pissed that someone would interrupt his train of thought. "So the rumors are true, the demon can move faster than the eye can see," a voice said from behind the blonde. The blonde turned to see a man around the age of 20. He was short, only an inch or two taller than he was, which was 4 feet and 8 inches. So yeah, he was shorter than most in his class, but it also meant that he could move more quicker and stealthier than he others. The man wore the typical attire for a Chunin, nothing special. Except for his long sword on his back, but to the blonde it looked like a piece of junk. "Why do people keep calling me a demon?" he asked himself. "I don't know what you want and I don't care. So tonight, since I'm feeling generous, I'll give you a deal. Leave me be and I won't kill you," the academy student said to the Chunin as his eyes pierced into the eyes of the attacker. Said attacker had short gray hair and gray eyes to match. He had a goatee and studded earrings. He was buff and the blonde knew he had power behind his strikes. So he was thinking a taijutsu specialist. Naruto smirked. He knew what he had to do to defeat him. "My name is," the man started. "I don't care what your mother named you. For declining my deal and disturbing me, your sentence is death," Naruto said, jumping backwards into the trees behind him, confusing the ashen-haired Chunin. Naruto threw a single kunai at the man, who easily caught it. "What is that? This is nothing. You're nothing," the midget said, turning when he heard the whizzing of another kunai flying through the air. He caught that one as well. He started laughing when he saw Naruto running right at him with a pair of kunai in his hands. The man easily dodged a blonde strike and punched him into a tree. He dashed and rammed his knee into the blonde's chest. Blood splattered on his leg and he smirked evilly and started punching the blonde repeatedly. After about the 50th strike to the child's face, the man reached behind him and grabbed his long sword and stabbed it through the blonde's heart. Crazed laughter rang out through the area. The man was laughing so hard that he didn't notice the moon in the sky turn red like blood. Clouds started gathering and the man heard thunder. Lightning suddenly struck in front of the man, right on top of the blonde. Luckily the Chunin acted in time to jump back. As he landed he noticed the temperature in the air drop to icy levels. He could literally see his breath as he started sweating, even with the cold air. The reason for his sweating was because he was witnessing something rising from the ashes of the demon. After a second he deduced that it was the Shinigami. He was dressed in black, the ashes made up his cloak. The entity rose his skeletal hand and the leftover ashes on the ground lifted off the ground and created his signature scythe. The Chunin was extremely terrified, so terrified that he couldn't even move. He trembled when the entity spoke. "You, who has killed an innocent, shall be sent to hell, where you'll burn for all eternity," the specter said, black smoke coming from inside the hood. The Chunin's eyes hardened. "Innocent, that thing has either injured or killed all those that confronted him," he yelled before he felt Kai unlike any other suddenly drop on him. The human dropped to his knees and yet he continued to glare at the god. To call him innocent is almost as worst as to call that demon fox a saint. The man yelled before the scythe of the Shinigami sliced off his head. The body of the man dropped to the floor. Even with the fear in his eyes he continued to defy me. "He deserves a little respect," the entity spoke as he disappeared. Seconds later the moon returned to normal and Naruto walked into the clearing, not a scratch on him. Well, there wasn't any new scratches as he was training before. The blonde walked up to the motionless and brain-dead man and crouched next to him. "Genjutsu has its wonders, no? I'll let you live since you earned just a little of my respect," he said, standing up. He began to walk away when he got an idea. He ran back and took what made the man a Chunin. His vest, because it was just his size and also because it matched his outfit. Release flashback. Naruto smirked to himself for handling the situation the way he did. He exited his apartment and began his morning routine, 3 laps around Konoha, then heading to the nearest training ground, which was training ground number 7, where he would do 200 sit-ups, 200 push-ups, 200 hits to the logs per limb, and then he would finish the workout by going back home and taking a shower and dashing to the academy for school. As always, he would be finished by 8 o'clock just in time for school. Iruka was a scarred Chunin that worked as a teacher at the academy with his partner Mizuki. These two taught the students that were on their way to graduation day, which consisted of the heirs and heiresses of the village's clans. I won't go into detail because they're the same as in the canon version. Just Naruto is different. I'll change people to fit the story if I feel that it's necessary as the story progresses. Except Iruka, I'll change him now, you'll see. It was almost time for school to start and the class was filled with students, well, almost all his students. Uzumaki Naruto wasn't in his seat yet. Nobody knew what he did before or after school because he would always leave as soon as the bell rung. Iruka looked at his watch, 7:59 AM, with only 10 seconds before he could punish the demon for being late. A couple seconds later and Iruka started counting down in his head. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. He thought, looking at his clock, and then on 1, Naruto appeared in his seat. Said seat was in the back of the class and the bell rung, causing Iruka and Mizuki, who was also counting down, to hang their heads low. Damn it. They both cursed in their heads. Right on time as always. They thought again as they shook their heads and begun the lesson, which was just a review on the cages of the village. Can any of you tell me about the order of which the Hokages went into office? Mizuki asked, before pointing to the classroom's bookworm, Haruno Sakura. Irizette silently squealed at being picked. Senju Hashirama, the Shodai Hokage, founded this village along with Uchiha Madara. His brother Senju Tabarama would later become the Nidaime Hokage after Hashirama falls in battle in the First Ninja War. Before that happened, the two brothers trained one Sarutobi Hiruzen, who later became the Sandaime Hokage. The Sandaime trained the Densetsu no Sanin, and Jiraiya, the Gama Sennin, trained Namikaze Minato, who became the Yondaime Hokage. After the events of the Kyuubi attack 12 years ago, the role of Kage returned to the Sandaime after the Yondaime fell to the Fox. She ended her speech feeling proud of herself, even though that was a question anyone could have answered. Naruto had been staring out the window the entire time Sakura had been giving her speech. Bored, I'm so bored. What to do, what to do? Who should be the target of my entertainment? He looked around the class, looking for the perfect victim. When his eyes landed on Dog Breath, he smirked, unnoticeably. He did some hand seals under the desk and started his Jinjutsu. Lately he's been excelling in Jinjutsu, maybe all those chakra control exercises he does after school were finally paying off. First he started messing with the Mutt's sense of smell, he started making him smell cats. Naruto watched as seconds later Kiba's nose started sniffing, unnoticeable by anyone except him. After a full minute he started phase 2 of his little prank. Which was the Mutt sense of hearing. Not even a second later, Kiba was slowly turning his head back and forth. Hey, do any of you guys hear meowing? The Inyazuka asked out loud, interrupting the class. Excuse me, Kiba-kun, can you explain to me why you decided to ask such a question? Iruka said. Kiba didn't listen, he just held up his hand and started sniffing, trying to locate the position of the cat. It's near, you ready, Akamaru? Kiba said, making the dog whine and put his head down. This confused Kiba, but he paid no attention to it as the scent and the sound of the meowing was getting stronger and louder, respectively. By now the class was getting a little creeped out by the weird behavior of Kiba. The blonde was different, he found it so hilarious that he had to hold in his laughter as much as he could. He made a final seal that messed up the Inyazuka's sense of sight. Kiba had been moving around the room, his nose sniffing and his ear twitching. The teachers were at a loss on what to do, as this had never happened before in the class. They couldn't hear or smell any cats, so they knew the kid was under a Jinjutsu, but from who? The only ones in the class that can do a Jinjutsu was the men, maybe Uchiha Sasuke, only because of the Sharingan. But not only did he not unlock the Sharingan yet, but he didn't even look at the young Inyazuka, or even in his direction the 20 minutes they've been in the class. Suddenly Kiba turned around and found the cat right behind Sasuke's head. A second later he ran at it, jumping over Sasuke and started chasing the cat. The funny part about that was while hopping over Sasuke, the Inyazuka kicked the back of the Uchiha's head. As this was happening, Naruto started fooling around with a Mutt sense of direction, and soon enough Kiba ran right into the wall, making the class erupt into laughter. Naruto ended his technique when he hit the wall, and since everyone else was laughing, it wouldn't look suspicious if the blonde didn't laugh. And laugh he did, even Shino, the class statue, chuckled at the sight. Praises like, "Great job, retard." And that's dead last behavior right there. Were spoken throughout the room. After getting his desired amount of laughter, the blonde sat back and watched the chaos. Unknowingly someone had noticed everything he did, and yet she didn't do anything to stop it. Since Kiba was always so persistent with his advances and she was glad that he was humiliated the way he was. That's my Naruto-kun, show him who's boss. The young heiress thought, quickly deactivating her bloodline. Kiba rose to his feet and held his head, he heard the laughter and immediately felt embarrassed for himself. He swore to himself that he would find out the one who did this to him and he would personally torture the poor fool until he was begging to stop. He walked to his seat and put his head down. While this was happening, Iruka and Mizuki had been watching quietly, not knowing who to apprehend for this. Suddenly Iruka grew angry and glared at Naruto, with him being a fox demon and all. Fox demons were known for their prowess in the field of illusion. Uzumaki, for placing Kiba-kun under an illusion, you're suspended for the rest of the day. Seeing that Naruto was about to complain, he continued, no excuses, now out of my face. He yelled, pointing to the door. The blonde stayed seated for a while, glaring at Iruka, but seeing the anger in the Chunin's eyes, made him scoff and walk out the class. By this time Kiba had been glaring at the blonde's back, choosing him to exact his revenge upon. Outside the door he smirked as his plan succeeded, yet again. I knew that scarred bastard would accuse me, now I have extra time to train. The blonde muttered, exiting the building. He began walking around the village, ignoring the glares sent his way. He walked into an alley and promptly vanished. Using his bloodline in public was something he vowed never to do because he didn't know what the village would do with him. He had his doubts about the subject ever since he awakened it. Either the village would cherish him for bringing another bloodline into the village or attack him and forcibly take the bloodline from him in some horrific display of evil. He appeared in training ground 7. First he checked if anyone was currently training inside, since he was way earlier than the time he would usually get here. After finding none, he formed the rabbit seal, Jinten. Bunshin. He muttered to himself as 5 clones appeared around him. These clones were obviously different than regular clones, as these were created purely for speed. But that wasn't the only thing, if they were faster than Naruto's punch, then the punch would go right through. But if the clone wasn't faster, then the punch would connect and it'll get dispelled. Since they all had the same skill as Naruto, he often had to find ways of hitting his clones before they had time to react, and that was the hard part. Thinking on the fly was a strategy he only used for a last resort. Just like every other time he starts this training, he stood in the middle of the field while his clones were on the edge of the clearing. This exercise was based solely on increasing his reflexes and natural speed. It was also based on taijutsu, since his clones didn't have the chakra capacity for a prolonged ninjutsu fight and he wasn't given enough time to even form the hand seals. Another condition was that he couldn't use his swift release at all, especially if it was to boost his speed. His clones could use the bloodline as much as they wanted to, it's just that he didn't want to rely on his bloodline for anything other than surprise attacks. Like always, the training started abruptly and he was punched in the chest, sending him into another punch that came way too quickly. He was sent to the floor and he quickly had to get up and jump in the air, which wasn't smart at all. While in the air, the original watched his kunai pierce the ground right where he was a second ago. He then looked towards his clones and realized they had just finished their 3 hand seals and crossed their arms. Of all the techniques I know, they decide to do this one. He thought, making his own seals. Jinten. Hashi no Nami. Wave of stars, the clones yelled, swinging their arms, releasing a turret of electric stars. Futen. K's no Tate. Shield of wind, the original yelled as a shield of wind appeared in front of him. The 2 techniques clashed and fought for dominance, the stars came out on top. The original blonde's stolen vest protected his torso from most of the damage, but the shirt underneath was unfortunately shredded, as was his shorts. Although his shorts were seriously tattered, he was glad they remained around his waist. His skin suffered the same fate, blood covered his upper body as he began his descent to the ground. He was glad that he held the shield up for as long as it was up for. He designed that technique so that it was impossible to dodge those stars with the speeds they were going. As his feet touched the ground, he quickly charged lightning chakra to his feet and immediately charged at the nearest clone and quickly kicked it in the stomach, dispelling it. He ducked his head, dodging a strike from clone number 2. After that he took out a kunai and blocked the kunai strike from clone number 3, he retaliated immediately and swung at the kunai holding clone. That strike was blocked by clone number 2. When that happened, clones number 4 and number 5 ran up and began punching. He dodged the barrage as best as he could, but in his position he began to feel the punches. Still holding back the kunai from clone number 3 and clone number 2 still holding his fist, he began to think. He got the idea fast and charged lightning chakra to his fist and shocked the clone. It didn't dispel, but that was enough for him as he substituted himself with clone number 3. Fortunately, his other clones couldn't stop themselves and that clone was dispelled. Naruto, a little away from the remaining clones, did a single bird seal. Raiden. By Akurai. White lightning, he said, using his index and middle fingers on each hand and pointing them at clones 4 and 5, respectively. The clones, not expecting the sudden use of ninjutsu, did not have time to dodge and was promptly dispelled. The original blonde didn't have time to praise himself as the remaining clone was there to punch him in the gut, sending him into a tree. Swift, the name of a clone, when there is only one, appeared in front of the original via swift release and charged his fingers with lightning. This is going to hurt. Naruto thought. Raiden. Fuzoku. Shortage, the clone said as he unleashed hell on Naruto's nervous system. After about the 20th hit, he raised his hand and placed it on the original blonde's head. Raiden. Shouted on. Shut down, he yelled as a thunderclap sounded throughout the field and Naruto dropped to his knees and then proceeded to dispel, shocking Swift. Naruto was crouching meters behind the last remaining clone, he was panting after taking 10 of the 20 shortage attacks. Like the name suggested, his nervous system was invaded by countless electrical circuits and his entire right side was numb. And the limbs he could move weren't listening to him. He was glad he got out of the viscous combo in time because he would have been paralyzed for months. He could tell the clone was running very low on chakra and as soon as he could move his limbs, he charged wind chakra to his feet and jumped back. Swift sensed the use of chakra and looked behind him to see Naruto gliding backwards onto a tree where he proceeded to make a break for it. He smirked and used Swift chakra to catch up. The original looked behind him to see the clone behind him closing in on his position and fast. He got an idea and the next branch he jumped on he dropped an explosive node and jumped off. The explosion destroyed the branch, but the speed the clone was going allowed him to literally glide over the broken branch and landed on the next one. The original blonde cursed, damn it, dog, rat, tiger, bird, futon. Repushu. He thought thrusting his palm toward the clone. The collision was imminent and pretty awesome as the clone didn't have time to do Jinten. Danzo afterimage to dodge the wind palm. The blonde sighed and dropped to the ground and started walking towards the exit of the training ground. He entered a clearing and turned to the lake, instantly took his vest off, sighing in grief at the damage it took. He tossed it to the floor and jumped in the water, as he did the lake began to turn red with his blood. He glanced at his body and wasn't surprised to see his wounds were nearly finished with its healing. He always healed quickly and he wasn't complaining about it. He looked at the sun and knew he had been fighting for what seemed like an hour and a half. He hopped for a while to help shake the water off of him and vanished using his bloodline as he needed a new pair of shorts. Hokage's office. Sarutobi sat in his office, doing paperwork. He continued to receive complaints from his villages concerning Naruto. It was either, the brat broke my ankle. Or the boy ruined my flower bed. Or the bastard stole my clothes. That one the Hokage knew had to be true since the blonde was wearing a new Chunin flak jacket this morning. I let him have it since the owner's in a coma. He said shrugging his shoulders as a Jounin entered his office. The look he gave her told her what she needed to do. The lone Jounin was a woman, she has long raven black hair, devilish red eyes and an hergless figure that'll never run out of sand. She wore wrappings as a dress that went to the middle of her thighs and a single red sleeve on her arm. She has a cute and slender face and legs that could literally go on forever. Her bust was a large C cup and her lips were just as red as her eyes. She did a quick salute and took a knee. The mission to invade and gather intel from the border of Kumo went off without a hitch, Hokage-sama. She said keeping her head down. The Sandame nodded, looking at another piece of paper before he threw it in the trash as it was just another bullshit attempt from the civilian council to gain just a little bit more power. You may stand Kurenai-chan. She did as she was told. Do you have the intel? He asked and she gave it to him. Good, now I expect a written report about the mission in a few hours, right now I have business dismissed. He said signing a paper and throwing away another as the woman left. He waited a while before opening the scroll. Kumo's planning something, and with these financial claims to strengthen their defenses, most likely for war, and in my experience, I bet it's us. The old cage thought. He put the scroll in his desk to study later. Of course the village hidden in the clouds hadn't stopped militarizing their army since the end of the Third Ninja World War. At this day and age, war with Kumo was a bad idea as Konoha was still hurt from the Kyuubi's attack. Also the annihilation of the Uchiha clan really put a dent in our army. Of course they were scapegoats, killed to prevent a civil war. He thought forlornly as another knock on his door broke him out of his thoughts. He looked up to see his assistant walking in with a stack of papers. He sighed and moved aside a stack of papers for her to place the new stake right next to it. I'm too old for this shit. Naruto's apartment hours later. It was maybe around 4 by the time Naruto finished meditating and stood up. It was the only way for him to control his emotions and stay in tune with the element surrounding him, which was nothing but his secondary element, wind. The small amount of wind he generated slowly spun around him, creating a little cyclone. Meditating was also an alternative to sleeping, it allowed him to remain aware of his surroundings and relax at the same time. Especially after the workout he just had, so the amount of time he's been meditating, he's been regaining his strength, stamina and chakra. Now it's time for some sword practicing. He said to the air, pumping his fist. He ran to the corner of his small one-bedroom apartment and grabbed the Ninja 2-style Bakken. It was a weapon he often seen the Anbu carrying on their backs, and since Anbu were strong and he wanted to be just as strong as them, well, you can see where this is going. Unfortunately, with on one to teach him, he had to make his own style that, fortunately, worked perfectly with and without his bloodline. He was thinking about naming it Jinsukuna Sudareki, which meant swift strike. It involved using his superior speed against his enemies, with a lot of thrusting and slashing, and anticipating the moves of the opponent and using it against them. Sadly, he hasn't had a chance to fight with anybody with his real sword, mostly because he acquired it from the weapons store. Also, if anybody realized he had it, it'll get taken from him because he wasn't even a ninja yet. He carried his wooden sword out of the house and hopped to the rooftops and dashed to training ground 7. He arrived in the field a couple of minutes later and stood in the middle of the field. He started his katas with vertical slashes. From up to down, and after doing that 100 times he did it from down to up and did that 100 times. He did the same with horizontal slashes. He then started on his diagonals, and after a while he began to increase his speed for different slashes he could do. After finishing the exercise, he created a single Jinten Bunshin, who had its own Bakken in its hand. This is the part I hate. If only they already knew the conditions. He thought, looking at Swift. Now, we will fight with only our Bakkens. Our bloodlines are not allowed, not even ninjutsu is allowed. If you use the bloodline, you will be dispelled. Do I make myself clear? The blonde asked his doppelganger. After the nod, Naruto himself nodded and stood in a stance with the clone joining him. Soon Naruto dashed toward his copy and quickly stopped himself and dropped into a crouch when his clone sent a quick stab his way. Right after doing that, Swift hopped to the side and slashed low. Seeing the strike coming and already being in a crouch, Naruto had no other choice but to bend as far back as he could. It wasn't far enough as the Bakken scaped against his forehead. Still in the momentum of the bending, he rolled back to his feet and jumped back. "Ami," he said, lighting touching his forehead, "that hurt like a bitch." He said as some of his skin had been scrapped off. Not to mention a small trail of blood was traveling down his face very slowly. He looked across the field to find that Swift was gone. He looked around, hoping to find the clone's chakra signature. He kept his senses up as he slowly walked to the center of the clearing, making it harder for the clone to get the drop on him. Suddenly, blood entered his right eye. This surprised him more than it should have, as he furiously rubbed his forehead and eye to get the blood out. Swift used the very second Naruto's guard was dropped to dash from the foliage to Naruto's right, keeping quiet the entire way. But Naruto's danger sense went off, and he took that as a note to ignore the blood in his eye and quickly parried the blow that was meant to hit him in the temple. After the parry, he kicked the clone in the knee, and when he heard a crack of a broken knee, Naruto quickly stroked Swift in the neck, right on his jugular vein. The force of the hit ruptured it, and the clone was dispelled. The academy students started panting. "That was a close one, the bastard creating and using the blind spot to get the drop on me. Thank Kami for my natural survival instincts." The blonde thought, now able to see through his right eye. It was at that moment that his eyes widened. He straightened up and looked around the field. "Who's there?" Naruto said, quickly looking around as he felt eyes on him, but he couldn't pinpoint the location as the person or persons were well hidden. After a while, the sensation disappeared and Naruto knew he must have been spied upon for a long time. He only felt the sensation now because he was no longer focused on the clone. "This could be trouble. I have to lay low until I graduate," he thought, frowning to himself as he usually can tell when someone is around him. He walked to the lake on the other side of the training field and looked at his reflection. He noticed his wound was healed and all that remained was the nearly dry and smudged blood. He knew that he healed very quickly, but he has yet to figure out why. He dunked his head in the water and rubbed the blood off his face as best as he could. After a while, he quickly whipped his head out of the water as he couldn't breathe. He stood to his feet, water dripping from his soaked hair. He stood there, thinking about the feeling of the eyes that were watching him. He didn't feel any malice that he'll usually feel from the villagers and even some of the shinobi of the village. It was mostly the Chunins and some of the no-name Jounins that despised him for reasons he still didn't understand. He shook his head of his thoughts, both literally and figuratively. The action caused the water to fling around before he swept his hand through his hair and breathed a sigh of relief. "That's enough training for today, I'm going home," he thought out loud, vanishing from his spot. Training ground number 7. In the shadows of a large oak tree, someone was chuckling. The chortle was low, but it was still laughter. The laughter wasn't crazed, but it was filled with anticipation and just a little nervousness. The person was nervous at almost getting caught, the anticipation, well, that's the mystery. Soon the laughter died out and the person pushed off the tree. The figure of the person was revealed, but the face was still hidden. "I'm not going to reveal anything about the figure other than that it's female. It's not who you think it is. You'll find out later. The kid has great senses and his kenjutsu skills aren't that bad either." It's actually pretty good for a kid his age, but he had some errors. I'm going to have to keep my eye on him and maybe in time I could show him a thing or two. The woman thought before vanishing from her spot. Anoha unknown location. An agent was walking through the dark corridor of an equally dark compound. He wore a complete black cloak and a blank white mask. On the bottom of the mask there was a kanji that said no, which meant root. The agent walked through the door at the end of the corridor. He took 2 steps before bowing down on a knee, his hood overshadowing his white mask. If a random person was to see this, they would think this person was crazy because he was bowing to darkness, with the only light in the room was spotlighted on him. "Tell me what you know, agent." A voice suddenly pierced through the darkness. The voice was low and gruff and had a cutting edge to it, like it wanted what it wanted so badly the voice would cut straight to your soul to acquire it. "Your charge has grown stronger, sir, his skills are rather impressive." The agent said, not moving from his spot. "What would you rate his skills then?" "From what I've deduced from the past month, I would say Chunin level, and a high one at that." The voice stayed silent as it thought about what was said. It wasn't surprising that Naruto was at the level of a Chunin, with the 2 years of training he got from him and the boy's own training. "Are you sure that it was a good idea to release the boy at the age of 9? It would be dangerous to the organization if he was to go to the Hokage. Especially since I know the old man is suspicious about where the boy had got his strength from." The agent spoke once more before a force unlike anything the agent has ever felt before was suddenly weighing his body down. It wasn't physical, but judging by the amount of it, it might as well have been. The agent tried not to show discomfort, but anybody could tell that he was trembling under the pressure. "Are you questioning my decision?" The voice said calmly, but still retained the piercing effect. The man tried to say as he had to use all of his strength just to remain conscious. He dropped to his knee and really bowed to his master. It took all of his willpower not to just flat out fall to the ground. The pressure lightened up, just enough for him to talk. "I'm sorry, master, it was wrong of me to question your authority." The agent said, staying silent. The man in the shadows thought for a while. This agent was one of his strongest in the entire organization, to dispose of him would be a bad choice for the organization. "I'll let you live now, but don't think that because of your skills that you're not irreplaceable or capable for reconditioning. Continue your mission and trust me, that boy doesn't remember we exist, only the power I've given him. You're dismissed." The boy raised his head to look at his master. He nodded before bowing his head once more. "Hi, you will not be disappointed, Danzo-sama," he said, standing up and walking out the same way he came. Even though he wasn't supposed to show emotion, he couldn't help the shudder that went up his spine when the conditioning was mentioned. "It really was a shame for me to release the boy, but Sarutobi was pressing on the issue about where the blonde was disappearing to every day. I know for sure the blonde remembers us, and when he wants a lesson or two, he knows where to find me." The Kane user thought. A week later, yet again Naruto was looking out the window of the academy, bored out of his mind. But it was okay, because in a couple hours he'll graduate and then Monday get a sensei, and finally he could show these people his true strength. "Attention class, after the break Mizuki sensei, and I will be giving you your final exam. The graduation exam will test your limits and push you past them. I'm not going to lie, if you succeed then you might be eligible to become a Konoha shinobi, but if you fail, then say bye-bye to the ones that pass, because you will not be seeing any of their faces for a long time," he said with a serious face at the end. It was a good speech indeed, it's just too bad it fell on deaf ears, as only half of the class had heard, the other half were busy yapping their mouths off. Seeing the tick mark on Iruka's forehead, Naruto quickly covered his ears. And just when he did that, the scarred Chunin did his big-headed technique, and like always the class quickly quieted themselves. "You know what, I'm going to switch things up this year, instead of letting you rest, I'm going to test you now, let's go outside," he said as his body flickered outside. The class began filing out and Naruto, who had resumed looking outside after the big head screamed, didn't care that he was being left. But someone did, and Naruto-kun. The blonde heard someone say. "Come on, let's become ninjas," she said, gaining just enough confidence to avoid stuttering in the sentence. The blonde gave her a huge foxy grin, causing Hinata to blush and poke her fingers together. "That is, if you want to." Naruto couldn't help but widen his grin, she was just so adorable with that blush on her cheeks, her short and extremely dark blue hair. Her pretty pupil-less lavender-tinted eyes and especially the way she poked her fingers together. All in all, like he said, adorable. He lightly shook his head, it would not be wise to get involved with the heiress of the Hyuga clan. "Sure, let's get our headbands." Outside, after going outside for the shuriken and kunai throwing test, the academy ninjutsu test and for a higher score, some even did an extra jutsu, some were forced. Sasuke did, Kaiten. And in no jutsu, fireball technique, Shikamaru was forced to do his Kajime no jutsu, shadow possession technique, to prevent Ino from hitting him in the back of the head, since she knew he had a technique to use. Shino just had his bugs around a tree before it was grounded to sawdust. After most of the clan heirs did their techniques, eyes turned to the blonde, knowing he knew a technique and wanted to see it. He smirked, figuring since he was about to graduate, he might as well give them a glimpse of his power. He stood with one of his hands in his pockets and pointed the other at a tree and whispered, "Raten." By Akurai. It happened so fast all the students seen was a quick flash. They looked at the direction of the tree to see a small gouge in the ground, and the tree was entirely destroyed, along with some of the trees further down the path, with the small gouge following behind. Damn, even with both of our Jinjutsus disrupting the demon's technique, it didn't happen how we intended. The silver-haired Chunin thought as Naruto stared at his fingers. Interesting, someone added more chakra to the jutsu, and that is what happened. If I were to add chakra to my other techniques, how much stronger will they be? I'll leave that thought for later, I think I'll name this advanced technique Raten. Shiroi Senko, White Flash, welcome to the list. Iruka sneered, alright class, let's start the Taijutsu part of the exam. You could pick either another student where you'll both be graded accordingly, or you could pick either of us senseis to fight. Mizuki and I will personally see to how you fare in a fight if you pick one of us. Iruka said, hoping the demon would get cocky enough to call him out. After watching fights that ranged from boring to not so boring, it was finally Sasuke's turn to pick, and since no one else had picked to fight the blonde, Sasuke picked him. Really, you want to fight me? Why don't you fight with Mizuki-sensei or Iruka-sensei? I'm sure they'll be thrilled to test the skills of the last Uchiha, Naruto said in a mocking tone. Fight me and you'll only become embarrassed at your poor skills. The blonde said while he was leaning against a tree. Sasuke bristled at the insult. Even though the two were different, there was one thing that they both equally hated, and that was fangirls, and the raven-haired Uchiha's fangirls started screaming at the blonde, "Don't talk to Sasuke-kun like that, Naruto baka." Naruto remained leaning against the tree, picking his ear, as the crowd of prepubescent girls stalked their way towards him. The scarred Chunin smirked, seeing his chance to put the demon in his rightful place. Fine, how about we make this interesting? Not only will you fight Sasuke-kun, but you will also fight with me at the same time. Not unless you don't want to be embarrassed by the gap between my strength and yours. The man said with an evil grin. Mizuki's own followed. The whiskered boy matched the man's evil grin with one of his own, his eyes unknowingly flashing crimson just for a second. Well, that is interesting, are you sure you're up for what's coming? Fighting an unknown was always interesting. I wonder how he'll fight, after all he's got to be out of practice. This should be no problem. He thought, pushing himself off the tree. Just remember to come at me with the intent to kill, or you're never going to come even close to defeating me. Sasuke recoiled a little at seeing the flash of red, but he, being the stubborn, emotion-driven boy that he was, charged at the blonde anyway. When Iruka seen the flash, he forced himself from having a mini flashback because he knew that Sasuke was in trouble, and he immediately disappeared with a shunshin. The whiskered boy caught the Uchiha's punch, and without even needing his danger sense, he used the Uchiha's momentum and pulled him, while he himself backed up. Iruka's kick had been going straight for Naruto's head, but with Sasuke's head now in the path, he had no choice but to kick his duck-haired student. Naruto let go of Sasuke's fist just as he was sent careening into a tree. He used a bit of his bloodline to quicken his speed, and while Iruka was still in the air, he grabbed the man's vest, and with brute force alone, he threw the man right into the floor. A huge dust cloud developing from the impact. The blonde jumped out of the cloud and landed on top of a branch above the raven-haired boy. He shook his head at the performance of one of the village's Chunin. Why is it that I can defeat these Chunin so easily? Am I really that strong, or are they that weak? Atop the academy's roof. On top of the academy sat the same female figure that was watching the blonde train with his Bakken a week ago. She had light blonde hair and a ponytail, dark violet eyes and purple lips that didn't seem to be from lipstick. Her canines were a little longer than usual, giving her a predatory look. Her nails were also a little longer. She wore a white cut-up blouse that showed her midriff. Over that she wore a black jounin vest, all of this was covering a large D-cup bust. She wore black biker shorts and has white tape on her shins and ankles. She wore black sandals that were designed to not wear down due to the user's speed. On her hip was her katana and wakizashi, each was black with the guard being a thick gray square. Currently she was watching the blonde wipe the floor with his classmate Sasuke and teacher Iruka. Uzumaki Naruto, you are an interesting child. No, after you pass this exam you will be considering an adult. She said. You forget Sukino-chan, he would still have to pass the real exam to be an adult in the eyes of the shinobi world. A voice said behind the woman. She scoffed, turning around. Is that doubt I hear in your perverted voice, Hironai-san? She said. Aspa pervert, why would you call me, your brother, such a thing? The silver-haired jounin said. Sukino grew a large tick mark on her head as she pointed at the book he had in his hand. The same book where his eyes stayed glued on the entire time he was talking to her. That's why you're a pervert. Get rid of that book when you're talking to me. She screamed, throwing a kunai at the book only for Kakashi to catch the weapon between his fingers without even looking at her. After putting the kunai in his pouch he looked up. You say something. He said looking up. Hearing a growl he chuckled and snapped the book shut before putting it in his pouch. Alright, it's gone now, let's just watch your boyfriend. He said, I smiling. He's not my boyfriend, we haven't even met each other yet. And plus I'm 10 years his senior, it'll never work. She said, glaring at the copycat ninja before turning her head to look at the younger blonde. Kakashi grinned at his young surrogate sister. You're still the same as always, Tsukino Amato-chan. Hokage's office. The Sandame sat in his office, doing paperwork. Of course after a while he became extremely annoyed about his assumption about Kumo. So maybe, Kumo doesn't want to do a full-on assault on our walls, but still they're getting ready for something. He thought, reading a random paper. He sighed before stamping a huge denied on it. That damned council, don't they have enough power? I need to find a way to take away their power. And speaking of the council, Danzo hasn't tried anything in a long time. And without the support of the bandaged elder, the other two elders have also been quiet. But his rival was the most suspicious of them. Why isn't he trying to gain power or take my position from me, like he used to? Or better yet, he hasn't demanded for Naruto-kun's death in 5 to 6 years. He began to think about the possible scenarios. Nah, Naruto-kun would never join that man, would he? He was shaken out of his thoughts when someone entered his office. Hokage-sama, a student, was just taken to the hospital along with a teacher. Their conditions aren't that bad, but they were hurt and are unconscious. A young man said, walking inside. Tsurutobi let out a long sigh. When is Naruto-kun going to learn how to hold back against others? He mumbled loud enough for the jounin to hear. How did you? He stopped, knowing that he seemed to know nearly everything when it concerned the boy. What are you going to do? He asked curiously. The Hokage smiled. Nothing, it was clearly a part of the exam, and clearly, he told them to be serious, and they weren't serious enough. They'll never learn. The boy hates being underestimated. He may hide it well, but he hates it very much. You'll see what I'm talking about soon. The old man said, seeing his jounin's confused face. Streets of Konoha. Naruto was on the way to Ichiraku after sending Iruka and Sasuke to the hospital in frustration. After his initial attack the fight continued and Sasuke was extremely slow, but that was to be expected as he just graduated. He was currently in the hospital suffering from a mild concussion. But Iruka, even after knowing this, it still pissed him off to see how rusty the man was. From what he gathered during their fight, Sasuke could have beaten him. That man needs to get out of the classroom and get into the field. Maybe the beatdown I gave him would give him that idea. He thought out loud while entering the little ramen stand with his hand on his chin and thought, because as a Chunin, his performance was worse than the other guy, absolutely pathetic. Hey Oji-san, let me have 3 beasts to start and keep 'em coming. He mumbled before ordering. Sure Naruto-kun. You're right on time as usual. I already have 2 ready for you. He said, putting said 2 in front of the boy. He then walked to the back to prepare more for the blonde, who muttered a quick-eyed Akamasu before he started munching. Naru-kun, who's pathetic, and please tell me you didn't steal that headband from somebody. A cute brunette said from behind the counter, with a slight glare. Naruto stopped mid-bite in mild fear. He knew from his training from a long time ago that he was never supposed to show any emotions, especially fear, but if there was anybody who he was afraid of, other than Hokage Jai-san and Danzo Jiji, it was his Amni-chan. I didn't steal this, I wouldn't do that, not after what happened last time. He said, frantically waving his hands in front of him. I just graduated from the academy and my teacher and one of my classmates were pathetic in their attempts to defeat me. AM had berated the blonde when he walked into the stand with the Chunin flak jacket last week and told him not to steal anything like that again. Calm down Naru-kun, I know you didn't steal it, I was just playing. So now that you're a ninja, what are you going to do? What is going to be your nindo? She asked, leaning on the stand. The couple of bystanders sitting at the stand calmly listened to the blonde, waiting for his response. Well, I know it'll be difficult, but I want to show the people that I'm not a demon like they say I am. I know sometimes I act cold and distant most of the time, but it's just an act to control my emotions. You know how emotional I get when something bad happens. He said, standing up and looking at his older sister. To show the people I'm more civilized than a demon, I must be in a position that demands respect, and the only position I can think of is the Hokage. He said as he set his chopsticks on top of his 2 empty bowls before he smiled at his sister. Just wait, Ni-chan, when people find out the future Hokage eats here, business is going to be booming. He said, making her smile as her father placed 3 more bowls in front of him. Everyone smiled at the blonde, knowing that his dream was big and with the right help he can accomplish it in no time. I gotta come here more often, after all I can't become the strongest ninja on an empty stomach. He said, dropping back down in his seat and proceeded to stuff his face. Naruto felt really safe well inside the stand. Only those that liked to use their brains and could see that Naruto wasn't the fox that resided in him ate there. There was absolutely no malice from anybody in the stand. Everyone's sweat dropped at his last comment and went back to eating. AM smiled, you can do it Naruto-kun, I believe in you. After 10 minutes Naruto finished his 20 empty bowls of ramen and left the stand with a satisfied belly. He knew it was around 5, so now it was time to study on his worst subject, Hyuinjutsu. If there was one thing he hadn't gotten better at, it was his sealing techniques, he just wasn't patient enough to draw seals, and he was already pretty patient. Also a simple mistake, like a wrong character or wrong stroke, and it's going to be a catastrophe for him. There was this one time when he was trying to put a chakra lock on his door, after 30 quiet and boring minutes he ended up blowing up his door. He didn't know how it happened, but yeah, he's thankful that he remembered the formula for the seal, so that he would never put that on another door of his, as it was just a waste of ink and a door. But it could be a good advanced exploding tag, so that's a good thing that came out of that failed attempt. So do I mean Naruto, having a casual stroll through the village huh? A voice said exactly next to the blonde. The electric blue-eyed recruit just continued walking, yes a casual walk, so what do you want Mizuki? He said crackling his eye open enough to see said Chunin. The Chunin smiled, oh nothing, I heard that you want to be the strongest ninja in the world. I knew that was you watching me from afar. I had my doubts, and that's impressive in of itself. Only the most skilled could drop under my radar. He said walking into a shortcut alley to his apartment. What is it you really want? The blonde said appearing at his complex and begun stepping up to his apartment. Mizuki let out an inaudible sigh, I think I might have a way for you to get started on that path of greatness interested? He asked glancing down at the blonde. Really? A way for me to get stronger? Sign me up. The boy said excitedly. The evil Chunin grinned patting Naruto's shoulder. That was easier than I thought. Nighttime, in the darkness of the night, Naruto was leaping through the village with a giant scroll on his back. He didn't know it would have been so easy for him to infiltrate the Hokage tower like that. It was easier for him to infiltrate and assassinate thanks to the first years of his training, he complemented that by added prolonged combat to the criteria. So now he was becoming an all-around ninja, which was very rare. Now all I have to do is head to the meeting place. He thought, of course he placed a note inside the office for the Hokage about this little mission he was put on. It explained everything from who assigned it to him and what he was supposed to do, it also stated what Naruto wanted the Hokage to do. The blonde dropped down into a clearing in one of the training fields. He dropped the scroll to the ground and opened it, let's see what this scroll has to offer. Training ground, Naruto sat in front of the forbidden scroll of sealing. The first technique he saw that interested him was Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, shadow clone technique. It was the answer to his prayers, giving him a clone specifically for scouting, plus it had loads of other benefits. He broke down the mechanics of the technique quickly and learned it even faster. He unfurled the scroll further for more techniques. He found another technique that was similar to his bloodline. It allowed the user to move faster than the speed it took for a bolt of lightning to reach the ground. The drawback was the sheer speed at which you were moving could easily tear your muscles apart. Though, that could easily be overcome with intense physical training. If it's an attempt to mimic my bloodline, then I should be able to easily achieve it. Naruto thought, knowing his body was naturally used to moving at extreme speeds. Again the blonde broke down the mechanics and begun learning, Kazoku, lightspeed. Naruto wasn't surprised to find his idol, Minato Namikaze, had created the technique. It was easy to deduce that he only used it in emergencies when he couldn't use his Hirashin no Jutsu, Flying Thunder God technique, for some reason. Half an hour passed and Naruto finally completed the technique. He moved around the clearing, using the technique, a few times. It was just a little bit faster than his swift release. It was akin to the speed of someone who had released 5 of the gates of sealing, while swift was 4 released gates. Naruto was a little peeved that there was a way for people to go faster than him. He quickly disregarded it when he thought about just who in the village might even be capable of such a feat. Only 3 names really came to mind. It was then that a thought came to mind. Just where the hell is Mizuki at? I've been here for a good hour now. Naruto said stretching his arms a bit. After a few more minutes of waiting, the blonde shrugged his shoulders. The longer it took for Mizuki to get here, the more time he had with the scroll. He'll get here when he gets here. He thought returning his attention back to the scroll. If he's not here in the next 5 minutes, I don't think I'll be able to keep him alive. Naruto added in thought. SNSN. It was 15 minutes later when Naruto sensed people landing 10 yards in front of him. Directly in front of him was Mizuki, along with 4 other, nameless, Chunin. What took you so long? Naruto questioned with a tick mark on his forehead. Because of his abilities, he didn't like waiting. The silver-haired Chunin flashed a sinister smirk at the blonde genin. You didn't think I was going to come alone did you? I had to gather the others. He said sweeping his hand around to prove his point. Naruto rose an eyebrow at the other smirking Chunins. Now give us the scroll and we'll give you your reward. Mizuki added as the others started chuckling darkly. Naruto blinked a few times at the man. Did he really think he was just going to hand him the forbidden scroll? You had me waiting for 2 hours and you only brought 4 others to help you? The whiskered genin asked as he rolled up the scroll and tied it around his hip. It hung loosely before the blonde tightened it securely. The air around them seemed to thicken and Mizuki began to sweat. He remembered seeing the blonde fight briefly against Iruka and Sasuke and the single technique they tried to sabotage. So, of course, he felt that a 5-on-1 fight against a boy would easily overwhelm him. At that thought, his will increased. They're all the help I'll need. Naruto slowly begun walking towards them, putting them on guard. His head was down as he walked, his blonde bangs overshadowing his eyes. All that was visible was his lips, and said lips were slightly raised in a smirk. He rose his head, his cerulean eyes beaming with joy. You should have brought more. He spoke, vanishing from his position. Naruto promptly appeared in front of one of the unnamed Chunins. It happened so fast, no one saw the punches impacting. Only the fact that the man was grunting and quickly lifting off the ground told the others that he was being hit. Naruto smirked before he spun and kicked the man in the gut, sending him through the nearest tree. The others unconsciously took a step back in pure shock. Naruto turned his head and his smirk widened as he pointed his index finger at the group. Raiden. Shiroi Senko. White flash, he whispered as a bright flash filled the area, blinding them. Mizuki opened his eyes to see that 2 of the others were hit by the attack. The trench in the ground was the only remainder of the used technique. What are you doing? Find him. Mizuki ordered to the last man. The man shakily nodded before he took to the trees, searching for the blonde who seemed to vanish along with the fading light. You think I'm scared of you, brat? I'm one of the strongest Chunins this village has. The silver-haired Chunin yelled to the trees. That's a nice bluff, Mizuki team. A voice spoke behind the man. The Chunin turned and found only air. You don't scare me. He yelled, taking both of his large Fuma shurikens off his back. The man heard the blonde release a chuckle and he promptly threw one of them in that direction. He was surprised to see Naruto was impaled through the stomach, the large shuriken, holding him against a large maple tree. The sight pleased him, that is until the image of the blonde started becoming transparent. The afterimage technique. A voice said when the blonde against the tree completely vanished. One of my most useful of support techniques. Naruto continued to speak, walking from behind the same tree the shuriken was piercing through. He looked at it and whistled in slight surprise. Wow, it went pretty deep, surely I would be dead if it hit. He said. After Naruto finished talking, a Chunin fell above him with a sword in his hands, preparing to vertically bisect the blonde. Again the blonde became transparent as the sword passed through him. What's wrong with you two? How come you can't touch me? The whiskered boy mocked, walking into the clearing again. Both of them growled and threw a volley of shurikens, one of them very large. Instead of using the afterimage again, Naruto simply substituted to safety. Mizuki widened his eyes when he realized that the other man was impaled by half a dozen shurikens. He turned to see Naruto there waving at him, with a smile on his face. You didn't expect that, did you? He asked, widening his grin. The last Chunin growled in anger and swiped his hand in an attempt at striking the blonde. A destroyed log was the boy's answer to that problem. Innocent laughter filled the area, only causing the man to grow angrier. I'll get you, demon. Mizuki yelled as he began to retreat, realizing the blonde was too strong for him. Mizuki only ran for a total of 5 seconds, 100 yards, before Naruto appeared out of nowhere and kicked him in the side. That reminds me of a question I've had. Naruto said, watching the man struggle against the tree. Why am I called a demon? Naruto said, confusion marking his face. Mizuki widened his eyes as a plan quickly came to mind. I'll tell you what you need to know, just don't kill me. He pleaded, dropping to his knees, wincing loudly as a sharp pain erupted in his side. Naruto stood over the man, keeping a 10-foot distance. I'll think about it. He said, crossing his arms, but keeping his guard up for any unwanted surprises. There was no doubt that a dying man would sprout a silver tongue to continue living. It was obvious this was such a case, though whether he would tell lies was the question in his mind. The man nodded, lowering his head. The attack of a demon also marked the birth of one. Said demon was the absolute strongest mankind has ever encountered. There was no way humans could kill it, as it was made of pure demonic chakra. Mizuki started keeping his eyes on the blonde through his bangs. Surprisingly, the demon was defeated by our 4th Hokage, sealing it in a child. But the sealing didn't kill the demon, it only seemed to reincarnate it. You, Naruto Uzumaki, was that child. You are the 9-tailed fox. He yelled, raising his head to see the shock all over the boy's face. It was absolutely priceless. Naruto was genuinely shocked at the news. It would explain a lot, most especially his whisker marks. It was plain as day, and yet it escaped his knowledge. There was no doubt the man was speaking the truth. Surprise struck him right in the face, both figuratively and literally. It was mostly the fact that his idol was the one that caused his condition. The blonde flew through the air, pain racking his nose. The pain seemed to bring him to reality, and he was instantly angered at being hit. Nobody hits me. He thought riding himself in the air and skidding along the ground. Mizuki was already in front of him preparing a wide kick. The blonde acted fast and struck the leg 3 times, twice around the knee and the third directly on the knee. Said knee was promptly broken because of the axe, Naruto's supreme speed, allowing such a thing to happen. Mizuki yelled, clutching at his knee in pain, dropping to the floor in the process. The blonde chose this moment to return to the offensive. He repeatedly stomped on the man's torso, knowing after the first 5 times a few ribs were broken. Nobody strikes me. Nobody. 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 Naruto continued to rant. Luckily, before Mizuki died from such an assault, Anbu appeared around the blonde. The Sandame along with him, he was the one that grabbed the blonde and picked him up and took a few steps back. No Naruto-kun, calm down. Hirashin spoke fiercely. Naruto continued to release killer intent, directed straight at the silver-haired Chunin on the ground, lying in a small crater. Anbu, take the man to Ibiki. Don't have him treated, it'll make Ibiki's job all the more easier. Hirashin said as the team left, one staying behind. Naruto calmed down just enough that he was no longer yelling. The Anbu cut the cord that kept the scroll tied around him. After that he took said scroll back to where the blonde found it. Naruto was still mad, but it wasn't about Mizuki hitting him anymore. The blonde turned and punched Hirashin in the face. Why the hell would you keep that from me? He yelled completely angry. He clutched at his head as pain struck through it, though it wasn't regular pain. It was like he was forcibly getting stronger, he knew then that it was the fox's doing, acting on his enraged psyche. Hirashin knew he deserved the hit. He grew worried when the blonde grabbed at his head, tightly shutting his eyes. I'm sorry Naruto-kun, I had to. Otherwise, the entire village, old and new generation, would know your secret. I thought, if they didn't know, you could gain some friends and be happy. Hirashin spoke soothingly as he crouched beside the blonde, holding him affectionately hoping he'll calm down. A lot of fucking help that did. Everyone still hates me, I'm a fucking demon. Really? Naruto yelled, thrashing around in the Hokage's arms, trying to get free. To make things worse, the fourth was the one to do it. Naruto spoke through his clenched teeth, tears rolling down his cheeks at the apparent betrayal. Tears also rolled down the old man's cheeks because this was absolutely nerve-wracking. It almost made him glad the boy didn't know the entire truth. Curse that Mizuki for revealing such a secret. Hirashin thought, hating that he didn't appear in time to stop the man. Not everyone hates you my boy, you know I love you as if you were my own. Not to mention the Ichiraku family, who love you with all of their heart. And Anko-san. If she saw you right now, you know she would be sad. Hirashin said, slowly rocking the boy, trying with all his might to reassure the boy that not everyone hated him. Plus there are some good people in the village who wouldn't like seeing you sad. He added. Silence was the man's response. Hirashin had been looking into the trees in front of him, he didn't notice the boy spacing out. What happened? He questioned himself. Naruto's mindscape. Naruto found himself in an empty space. Though he knew that there was grass underneath his feet because he was barefoot. Naruto knew that he was in his mindscape because that's what he liked to do, meditate in the grass and just felt the artificial wind breeze around him. Though there was something different about his space that he hadn't noticed at all. A large rock was about half a mile away, but the blonde saw it clear as day. It didn't take him long to arrive at the location and he noticed that it was at least the same size as the Hokage mountain. Clearly still a large rock. Naruto droned in his mind, noticing there was an opening that was leaking reddish air. The air had darkened the grass, turning it red. This must be where the Kyuubi is housed. Naruto thought out loud. You would be right to assume that. A malevolent voice spoke, shaking the entire mountain with its voice. Holy. Naruto couldn't help but jump slightly at the vibrations the voice made. Finally the brat hears me. I've been waiting for this day. The voice spoke again, although this time, not shaking the mountain. Naruto narrowed his eyes, no longer surprised at the voice. What is it you wanted to talk to me about? The blonde asked. To let me out. The Kyuubi roared, shaking the entire area violently. The vibrations even caused tremors below Naruto's feet. The blonde wobbled as he tried to find his footing and prevent himself from falling. He found it seconds after as the tremors came to a stop. He glared at the mountain with disdain. I'll never release you from your prison. Find another container to be stupid enough to follow with that request. Naruto spoke harshly. Not from the entire Sealan engine. Human, just from this infernal mountain. It's cramped in here. The Kyuubi spoke with hatred dripping from his voice. Naruto rose an eyebrow at the response. He doesn't want to escape, he thought in confusion. What do I get if I follow through with your request? He spoke, clasping his hands over his mouth as soon as the words were spoken. He sighed, knowing he couldn't take them back. I promise I will not eat you. That's oddly specific. Naruto thought, narrowing his eyes again. How do I know that if releasing you from this mountain won't entirely release you from the seal? Naruto questioned, scratching his cheek. Loud growling shook the mountain a bit, signaling the Kyuubi was getting annoyed. That's because that seal is around my neck. The kitsune growled out. Naruto shrugged his shoulders. How come you can't free yourself? Aren't you the strongest tailed beast ever? Capable of causing earthquakes, tsunamis and destroying mountains with a swish of your tail. Naruto said, going back to what he knew about the Kyuubi from a book about tailed beast and their mythical summaries. Yes, I can. Except, I'm also being constricted with chains that prevent me from moving either of my limbs, including my tails. The Kyuubi explained truthfully. Naruto stared at the mountain with a quizzical gaze and a raised eyebrow again. He started to say, almost not believing the story. He shrugged his shoulders. Worth a shot. He said, walking closer to the mountain. Are you sure you're not going to eat me? I will if you don't hurry up. The Kyuubi yelled in anger, making the blonde chuckle mirthfully. Alright. Calm down, don't get your panties in a bunch. Naruto said, looking at the mountain. He scratched the side of his head in thought, standing there for a minute or two. How do I free you? He asked before leaning against the mountain, before it brightened up and shimmered out of sight. Naruto's eyes widened as he finally gazed upon the Kyuubi no Kitsune. It was sprawled out on its stomach, his head closest to the blonde. Behind him were each of its 9 tails, also splayed out, along with each of its limbs. All around it were chains with spikes sticking out of them, keeping the Kyuubi where it was, going around him dozens of times, and going right through the ground. Just as the Kitsune said, a black collar was around its neck, with a seal tag stitched into it. Well, are you just going to stand there and gape, or are you going to get rid of these infernal chains? The Kyuubi spoke, its voice no longer muffled by the mountain. Naruto blinked a bit and chuckled to himself. My bad, hehehe. He chuckled, walking to the nearest chain. As soon as he touched it, all the chains around the fox ripped out from around him and sped towards the blonde. They began being sucked into him, causing the blonde to scream in slight pain. After it was finished, the blonde was left, panting heavily on his knees in utter exhaustion. Finally, I'm free of those constricting chains. Now I can sleep peacefully. It spoke, laying down properly and wrapping its tails around his body. Naruto's sweat dropped at the act. That's all you wanted? He asked softly in disbelief. Sure, I'm not such a bad demon fox. Well, I promised I wouldn't eat you, and I like to keep my promises. So, go away, before I gnaw on your body. He said, knowing full well that gnawing wasn't the same as eating. Naruto blinked a few times again in disbelief. He slowly turned and began walking away. As he was fading from sight, he muttered something. Why do I feel so used? Reality morning. Naruto looked at the time to realize it was an hour before 8. Already this new information seemed to be hampering with his everyday routines. At least I know why I heal so quickly. So having the Kyuubi can't be so bad. The blonde tried to reason with himself. Plus it's not like anything will change. Everyone still hated him, not because of the Kyuubi, but because of his general behavior. Naruto got dressed in his usual black muscle shirt with green cargo pants. He looked at the stolen Chunin vest and nearly sneered at the condition it was in. Damn clones, going overboard. He was going to have to repair it in the near future. He looked at the clock again and saw that 10 minutes had passed. He still couldn't believe the Hokage had pushed up the schedule for the team selection. He probably wanted the blonde on a team as quick as possible in order for him to get his mind off of recent discoveries. Well, there's no time like the present. Naruto muttered, slapping himself a bit. He cracked a smile, feeling a bit of himself returning to reality. He went and grabbed his ninjutsu and headed out the door. He hung the weapon horizontally across his back, just like he had the scroll the previous night, and took to the rooftops towards the academy. It took a few minutes to get there, but Naruto wasn't using any chakra to quicken his travels. The blonde landed on the rooftop of the building and released a sigh. He widened his senses, checking who was already in the class. It seemed everyone, but the Uchiha was there. He smirked a bit when he thought about the fight with the boy and Iruka. Those two should be alright by now. I only knocked them unconscious. Naruto thought with a yawn, he was still a bit sleepy. Not wasting any more time, the blonde made his way into the academy and then to his classroom. He ignored the annoyed glances he received from teachers and some older students. He received some from some younger ones as well, but it was probably from contained jealousy. Though he did see some blushes on the cheeks of some girls, and that made him smile. When he entered the classroom, nobody looked at him, not until he sat down in the back. Everyone stopped and glanced his way. The blonde saw the surprise in their eyes at seeing him before 8. He blushed and slowly waved at them. Yo, what's up? He asked with a chuckle before putting his head down, while everyone returned to what they were doing before. While his head was down, he could clearly sense some negative emotions emitting from one Inuzuka male in the room. He cracked his eye open and looked at the boy. I feel like I should apologize or something. I don't hate the boy, he just drew the short straw a week ago. Kiba continued to glare at Naruto, but that was the only thing he could do. Usually he would have tried at least one thing during the past week, but he never found him before or after school. This was technically his only chance, but he was a little terrified of what the blonde was capable of. Naturally his brash attitude would overlook this, but the fight-or-flight receptors in his brain was choosing flight. He visibly flinched when he noticed the blonde look straight at him. He heard Akamaru whine a bit before he noticed the blonde looked at the clock at the front of the class before looking back at him. Naruto blinked before standing up. "Kiba, follow me for a moment, I need to talk to you," Naruto said, gaining everyone's attention, especially Kiba's. They both heard some gasps in surprise and a troublesome from Shikamaru. The blonde walked out the door and Kiba remained in his seat. He shakily got up before following the blonde. Naruto waited a full minute before Kiba entered his line of sight. "I realized what I did a week ago was embarrassing for you and upsetting, no?" he asked, getting a slow nod of the head in return. "Well, I would just like to apologize for that. I was bored and you just seemed like a good target, again I'm sorry," Naruto said with a genuine tone. If he was going to get everyone to stop hating him, he really should not do things to make them hate him. Kiba's jaw dropped in surprise, he couldn't believe what was happening. The blonde enigma, the boy everyone was cautious of, was apologizing. Nobody in the class thought it would happen, but now he was witnessing it firsthand. He must have been silent for a long time because the blonde was tapping his foot impatiently waiting for a reply. "Oh, apology accepted," the brown-haired preteen slowly said. Naruto smiled wide. "Good, thank you. So truce," he said, extending a hand. Kiba looked at the hand cautiously and Akamaru shared the same feelings. He barked a bit and growled at the blonde from inside of the Inuzuka's jacket. "Hi Akamaru," he said as the little white pup continued to yip away. Naruto stood silently, looking at his wrist, wondering what time it was. "I really need to buy a watch or steal one. Whichever one happens first," Naruto thought. This morning was slow for the blonde and he didn't like it. He would rather be training somewhere. Why did he come to this place so early? "Alright, how about I give you a free buy?" Naruto said, getting an idea. The Inuzuka's talk with his partner was halted by Naruto. "What do you mean?" he asked, nearly forgetting why he was here. "I'll let you hit me, one time of course, as payback for last week. Then we can bury the hatchet and become friends," Naruto propositioned with a disarming smile. Again Kiba's jaw dropped, he couldn't believe the opportunity that just fell into his lap. It was only a bit of the payback he had in store, but he knew none of that was going to happen. "Well, I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth," the boy thought, clenching his fist. Naruto stood waiting for the inevitable. His eyes glanced up a bit and saw hair peeking from around the corner. He knew the class was watching them, so this was to also show them that he was a good guy inside. He clenched his own fist, already feeling a little bit of anger boiling up. He really didn't like being hit, being faster than everyone always prevented that. It was why he left the Underground Association. The old man didn't know about his Kekkei Jinkai, he just thought he was naturally faster and had above amazing reflexes. Another minute of preparing passed before Kiba swung his fist and struck Naruto right in the jaw. Audible gasps were clearly heard in that otherwise silent moment. The whiskered blonde's hands continued to clench and unclench and his brow continued to twitch. He was trying very hard not to lash out. His head was still turned sideways as he continued to try and calm himself down. He straightened his head and felt rage bubbling to the surface. He opened his eyes and suppressed the erratic emotion before smirking at the Inuzuka. "Truce," he spoke, wiping a bit of blood from his lip with his thumb. Kiba smirked and shook the blonde's hand. "Truce. For anyone to willingly take a punch like that took heart. Consider the hatchet buried and forgotten," he said, succeeding in speaking professionally. Naruto grinned while nodding. "Good. Now let's get back to class," he said, just loud enough for the others to hear, and quickly run back to class. He watched Kiba walk away with a slight smirk on his face. "There, that should help my credibility with the others. Now to deal with the other one," Naruto thought, turning to the other entrance of the room. "That apology goes to you too, Sasuke-san," Naruto said with a smirk. Only a few seconds passed before both Sasuke and Iruka appeared in the doorway. Both had witnessed the scene and both had the same feelings. Hate. Complete hatred for the blonde. They both knew he was lying. He wasn't sorry. He was a monster. Sasuke walked past him. "I don't need your apology. Just watch your back," he said, walking towards their classroom. "Then I have nothing to worry about," Naruto quipped at the retreating Uchiha. Naruto returned his eyes to the Chunin and frowned a bit. "It's been fun, Iruka. I don't know when I'll see you after today. Just know, when that day comes, you have better increased your skills because we will be having a rematch," Naruto said before body flickering out of sight. The Chunin sensei smirked at the challenge. "Don't worry, demon brat, I will have my revenge," he spoke, glaring at the blonde's previous spot. SNSN. Naruto sat in his seat as Iruka droned on about being proud of them for reaching this far and passing their exams. He didn't really have a lot of time to grade anyone, so he had no idea where Mizuki was, and that confused him. He was always here to help him cope with being in the same room as the demon. Naruto yawned into his hand while looking around. "I'm bored again," he thought, noticing the Hyuga looking at him. She eeped and looked back towards Iruka, causing him to shake his head. So sweet and innocent and super shy. Naruto thought before continuing to look around. He noticed others' eyes on him before they too looked straight ahead. Once or twice, he also noticed Sasuke's fangirl's eyes on him, glaring hatefully at him. He had to remember that they didn't see him apologizing to Sasuke. Too bad. I'm not doing it again. He thought before he heard Iruka began telling the students their teams. Naruto knew how the system was. So, since he was Rookie of the Year and Kiba was dead last, they were likely to be paired together. He wasn't disappointed. Team 7 will be Naruto Uzumaki, Kiba Inuzuka and Sakura Haruno. Your sensei will be Kurina Yuhi. Iruka spoke hearing the groaning from one pink-haired individual. Sensei, why do I have to be on the team with those two? She questioned loudly. Iruka let out a sigh because Sakura, the dead last goes with the Rookie of the Year, along with the leading Kunoichi. It's to balance out the teams. Trust me, I feel the same way you do. Now, teammate will be Sasuke Uchiha, Hinata Hyuga and Shino Aburam. Your sensei will be Kakashi Haddock. Team 9 is currently active. So, Team 10 will be Shikamaru Nara, Choji Akimichi and Ino Yamanaka. Your sensei will be Asuma Sarutobi. Iruka finalized putting down the clipboard he was carrying. Now wait for your individual teachers to come pick you up. Iruka said before leaving, most likely on his way to train somewhere. A few teams were picked up nearly immediately after the Chunin left. After 30 minutes past Asuma and Kurenai walked through the door. Team 10-7. They asked respectively. Naruto blushed upon seeing their sensei. Am I lucky or what? He thought quickly appearing in front of the woman. Let's go guys, we don't want to leave the beautiful woman waiting. Naruto said flashing the woman a grin. The two adults chuckled, the woman blushing. You heard him, let's go you two. She said before turning with Naruto right beside her. Training Ground 7. The newly formed team arrived at their new training ground. Kurenai leaned against a tree while the others stood in the sun. Okay team, introduce yourself to me. I want to know each of you personally before we start. Naruto perked up, I'm first. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. All my life I've been pursued hatefully for some reason, but that hasn't let me down. I like training, eating, and then training some more. I dislike those that judge me before knowing me. Lastly, I would like to tell you about my dream. My dream is to, one day, earn everyone's respect and become the Hokage so I can properly protect each of its citizens with all my power. I know I may act like it, but I'm not really a bad guy. I just like to be left alone. The blonde spoke with mixed emotions in the right spots. Kurenai nodded at the boy, already knowing, from his file, all of these things. It even said something about him training in the art of swordplay. She knew a few people who could help him with that subject. She also knew that he was very adept at ninjutsu, so she was going to have a blast with that. Alright, thank you for that Naruto-kun. Now how about you next Kiba-kun? She said looking at the Inuzuka. The boy released a grin. My name is Kiba Inuzuka. I'm a simple person, a boy who knows about the importance of loyalty to friends. Something happened today that changed my outlook on life. Though I still like playing and training with Akamaru, annoying my sister and now building up the rivalry I have with Naruto. Kiba said smirking at the blonde. Naturally I dislike felines, loud noises, and strong revolting smells. My dream is to get stronger to increase my skills to become the alpha in my clan. An alpha no one will challenge, just like my mother before me. Kiba said puffing out his chest proudly as he spoke. Kurenai nodded again. She too knew about the encounter with the blonde earlier in the morning. Originally she was against having the boy on her team because he was always after Hinata, who she loved as if she were her own. Now she was alright because he seemed to be changing. Thanks to the blonde. It was a good thing too, an alpha needed to be level-headed and knows how to think. Although they do tend to be overly brash, just like his mother was. She turned her head towards the last one, who seemed to be moping. Alright your turn Sakura-chan. Sakura stayed silent for a second before sighing slowly, as if finally accepting her fate. My name is Sakura Haruno. I like somebody who's not here and I dislike somebody who is here. My goal is to one day marry somebody and revive his clan. She said with hearts in her eyes. Kurenai softly nodded, again knowing that piece of information. She absolutely hated fangirls, they single-handedly make kunoichis less feared than shinobis. Tsunade helped a lot to dissuade that notion, but this generation was definitely going to crush all that progress. Not if I have anything to do with it. Time to nip this in the bud before I progresses any further. Kurenai thought, though wondering if it had already reached its peak. Okay good, those were some great introductions. Now I'm a little dejected to tell you that you have to pass my test before becoming real genins. She told the trio, who groaned loudly, except for Naruto who kept staring at Kurenai's moving lips. Are you serious sensei, we have to do another test. Kiba complained clearly depressed, as was Sakura, who surprisingly didn't voice her complaints. So what's the test? Naruto asked, cutting the woman off from answering Kiba. Kurenai turned her attention to the blonde and smiled at his positive attitude. "It's a search and retrieve mission," she said, pulling a picture from her pouch. "You three have an hour to find these 3 items. A watch, a rose, and a kunai. You're going to have to use every bit of your senses to find these items. I want you each to bring back 1 item. Whoever doesn't bring back one of these items by the end of the hour will be sent back to the academy," she said with a smile. That gave the desired effect she was going for, though she hated herself for it. She knew it was necessary in order to get them to complete the task by any means necessary. But you can't send one of yous back. Genins operate in 3-man cells along with their Jonin sensei. The balance will be off if there's only 2 genin and a sensei. Sakura proved once again why she was this generation's bookworm. "My team, my rules." Kurenai spoke, smirking at the girl's shocked face. "Come pick your targets and start the test," she said, holding out the 3 pictures. "I call the rose," Naruto said, snatching the rose before running into the woods. Kiba went and picked the watch, knowing his acute hearing will be able to pick up the ticking in the watch. Sakura was left with the kunai. She walked into the woods with a dejected sigh. But Naruto held up the picture and studied it. It was a rendition of a very unique rose. It was fully bloomed with the inside being white, and then as it traveled into the outside petals, it grew darker into a deep red. On the stem was a single thorn. It truly was a beautiful flower and matches Kurenai's outfit perfectly. The blonde thought, noticing there was a hint of its scent coming off of the picture. He really couldn't explain it, maybe it was supposed to be Kiba's objective, with him being a Inuzuka. Naruto took another sniff and sighed. He created a cross seal and created 2 clones. "I want one of you to go help Sakura find her kunai and the other to help Kiba find the watch," Naruto said as the 2 clones vanished from sight. It really shouldn't be hard to find a ticking clock in the middle of a forest, Naruto thought as the scent got stronger. "Well, found my target," Naruto added, looking down. 12 yards away was a cluster of flowers, mainly roses and daisies. Somewhere near the middle was the unique rose. Naruto maneuvered carefully through the cluster until he reached the flower. He picked it and made his way back to Kurenai, feeling good about his accomplishment. With Kiba, the brown-haired boy was jogging through the forest, keeping his footsteps silent. Akamaru was running beside him, also searching for the ticking watch. They've been searching for a good 10 minutes before he saw Naruto standing by a tree, his hands in his pockets. "Naruto, what the hell are you doing just standing there? Go find your rose," Kiba said, clearly aggravated. The clone waved it off. "Nah, I'll find it later. I'll just help you find that watch of yours," he said with a grin. Kiba groaned. "Alright, fine, let's go," he said before running off. They were running for a good 5 minutes before Naruto spoke up. "Hey Kiba, I think you need to clean out your ears," the clone said. "What the hell do you mean by that?" Kiba asked, gaining more annoyed. "I don't see you helping and finding this damn watch." Again the clone brushed the boy's annoyance off with a shrug. "Clearly because you couldn't hear the ticking of a watch, even if it was right beside your ear," the clone said, digging the watch out of his pocket. It was an old-fashioned pocket watch and it looked absolutely perfect. It was dark gold with a brighter gold chain. The ticking was faint even for those with sensitive ears. "You had it this entire time," Kiba yelled in anger. "Well yeah. I found it where I was standing when you found me. It was just hanging on a tree branch in plain day, though it was bathed in a streak of sunlight that nearly camouflaged it. Obviously it was also masked with a genjutsu, pretty impressive if you ask me." Kiba growled at the blonde and swung his fist in said anger. The blonde easily sidestepped it and took a step back. "You already used up your freebie dog breath. Plus I was trying to help you. There's no way you could have found it since it was covered with a genjutsu," Naruto said, tossing the boy his objective. The watch nearly flew over the Inuzuka's head, he had to reach for it. When he turned his attention back to the blonde to find him gone. "Where'd he go?" he asked Akamaru, who whined, not knowing at all. Kiba shrugged before twirling the watch by the chain as he and Akamaru walked back to Kurenai. But Sakura slowly walked through the forest, wondering if she could just use any ordinary kunai. She had already found 3, but they looked nothing like the one in the picture. The kunai in the photo had a white tape wrapped around it, while regular kunais had gray tape. After 30 minutes of walking, she entered a field where she saw Naruto throwing a kunai at a bullseye target, which was 20 feet above ground level. The tree it was on was thick and looked very difficult to manually. He was clearly 60 feet away from it, and when he threw it, it struck right in the middle of the target. She knew the blonde was skilled, but the class had only threw weapons at a maximum of 30 feet. She stared at the kunai and was surprised that it was wrapped in white tape. "What the hell, Baka? This was my job," she yelled, stomping over at the blonde. Naruto chuckled sheepishly while watching her approach him. She swung at him and the blonde easily dodged. "Why are you trying to hit me so fervently?" the blonde questioned as he continued to dodge her inexperienced assault. Sakura just continued to scream the word idiot with every swing. Is it because I'm not Sasuke? The clone questioned with a chuckle, blocking her next two punches, holding her little fists. Why do you like that asshole when there's a sexier blonde Adonis near you? The clone said, turning her around and slapping her in the ass. Sakura shrieked with a bright blush on her face. She turned around but didn't find any blonde there. AHH. When I see that hentai, I'm going to shove my foot up his ass. She yelled while stomping off. She remembered about the kunai and ran to it before running towards where Kurenai was waiting. Training ground 8 main clearing. Kurenai was standing in the middle of the clearing. Waiting for the others to find their targets. The first to return was Naruto, who presented her the unique rose with a blush on his cheeks. Here you go, a beautiful rose for a beautiful woman. Naruto said, reaching up to put the rose in her hair. See, it matches your beautiful eyes. Naruto added. Kurenai blushed lightly while straightening up. Oh, what a charmer. She said with a smile. The blonde chortled with a large blush on his cheeks. He didn't know what was wrong with him, but something was telling him to seduce the raven-haired beauty. He never felt this way. Well, there was the one time he saw Anko, but he was only 9 years old. Though they quickly became pseudo-siblings and she was very protective of him. Except he hasn't seen her in some time, like 3 days. Yeah, that's totally me. A demonic voice echoed in his head. What the hell? Kyuubi, I thought you were still asleep. Naruto thought while walking to a tree to feign sleep. Nope, I'm very much awake. Saw the whole thing this morning. Good plan, trying to earn the other humans' trust. Though if you ask me, I'll simply eat them all and use their bones to pick my teeth afterwards. The Biju spoke, making Naruto a little uneasy. I don't see myself committing any cannibalism any time ever. Naruto thought before the memories of his first clone came to mind. Wow, that clone was a little off. Though I guess I can't complain, I would have called him dog breath too. A few minutes later the Inuzuka entered the clearing and handed the Jonin the nice watch. Say sensei, can I have that watch? The blonde yelled at the Jonin. What, this old thing? I would give it to you since it's just been collecting dust inside of a box. But it means too much to me, I got from my father, who got it from his father and so on and so forth. She explained while looking lovingly at the watch. Family heirloom, huh? Naruto muttered with a sigh. I need a watch. He added with a dejected sigh while closing his eyes. More minutes passed by before Naruto snapped, his eyes opened. What the fuck? He yelled in his mind after receiving the memories of the last clone. I hate these clones. He added with disdain. He stood to his feet and jumped into the tree, hopping up at least to the 3rd branch, knowing Sakura was beyond mad, judging by the faint scream. Minutes later she returned to the clearing holding the kunai in a reverse grip. Found the kunai sensei, now where's Naruto at? She asked through clenched teeth. Kurenai chuckled at her question, having a feeling just why she wanted to know where the blonde was. He's over there in that tree. She said, ratting him out. Really sensei, it's like that, Naruto yelled from the tree. Sakura yelled and threw the kunai with all her strength. Everyone knew she wasn't a good throw compared to her teammates. So when the kunai impacted the tree, 10 feet below the blonde, everyone's sweat dropped. You need help, Sakura? Naruto asked with a chuckle. He saw why his clone acted the way he did. Sakura looked adorable with her angry look. Though the hair was a little too long for his liking, it didn't look right on her. Alright, you two be quiet and get over here. I have to give you your results. Kurenai spoke sternly. Naruto quickly appeared before her in a split second, a small betrayed glare in his eyes. The others quickly joined him, with Sakura shooting him glares, her cheeks still heavily tinted red in embarrassment. And Kiba was between them, wondering what happened between the two. Alright, I'm afraid to say, but you 3 barely passed. She said with a small smile. The reason you barely passed was because of the blonde here. I'm sure he knew this exercise was about teamwork, judging by how he used clones to help you two and ultimately find all the items himself. Naruto smiled brightly, feeling like the MVN, most valuable ninja. I was actually quite surprised at that, I knew he smelled different somehow. Kiba said, knowing there was something off about the blonde. The clone is still a creation of you and it felt very real. She said, her blush growing darker at the memory. Stupid perv. Sakura added, turning her head. Naruto chuckled a bit and held his hands up in surrender. I'm sorry, I had no idea my clone was going to do that, I wouldn't do it personally. Naruto said, using his fingers to rub his palm, somehow feeling the memory. Sakura looked at him strangely. He couldn't understand it because it only lasted a second before she grew angry. If you, she yelled, but was interrupted by Kurenai. Let me just stop you right there. You 3 are now officially Team 7. Meet here tomorrow morning for your official start. Congratulations, I need a drink. She muttered the last part before walking away. The team watched her leave before she body flickered. Naruto yawned, having the feeling it was around noontime. Well, I don't know about you two, but I could use some food right now. Naruto said with a grin. Kiba agreed, flashing a grin of his own, while Sakura glared at him and stomped away. I'll pay. The whiskered genin added. The two males watched as she stopped, waiting for them. They laughed, already having the feeling that they were going to be embarrassing the girl for a long time. Hokage building, empty room. The Hokage stood in a room by himself. It was nearing noon, about nearly the time for the second tests to reach their ends, if they hadn't already. Nearly instantaneously the room was filled with 8 Jonin senseis. "Ah, one of you are missing. No matter, he'll come eventually," the Sandaime said. "Tell me, how did your teams do?" One by one, the Jonins announced the students' fates. Each one of them were fails, that is until he got to Kurenai, who announced that her team passed, with a bit of a slur. "Kurenai-san, are you drunk?" She positioned her fingers slightly apart, just a little bit. She said softly with a giggle. Hirashin chuckled, already having a feeling. "That blonde sure is crazy. I think he's got multiple personalities." The old man thought, knowing that Naruto never had a base personality. He always acted different on different days. The old man then directed his attention at the last man, his son, who was wearing a standard Jonin attire, with the exception of an added accessory. A sash with the kanji for fire written on it. "And you, son? Pass." As expected of the next generation of Ino Shikacho. Asuma spoke with his signature cigarette in his mouth, though it wasn't lit. Hirashin nodded and dismissed the group. He knew Kakashi liked to do these things privately, he didn't know why though. That was just one of the many mysteries concerning the masked Jonin. "You can appear now, Kakashi-kun," Hirashin told the hidden man. "How'd yours do?" Kakashi appeared with a relaxed attitude, one hand in his pocket, the other holding Icha Paradise. I can't complain. I have 2 genins that work well with each other and 1 brash Icha. They pass, so I feel I'm going to have an interesting experience with them." Hirashin nodded and dismissed him. He didn't feel like having any extended conversations. He really wanted to continue his paperwork before it got out of hand, as it always does. With that, the Jonin meeting was done, in the span of minutes. Truly how every meeting should be handled. Team 7, a newly formed team of genins, were doing the 3rd mission of the day, walking the Inuzuka's dogs. Naruto blinked a few times as he held a leash to a few of the Inuzuka clan's more larger dogs, one being a very large bulldog. "So, why are we walking your dogs?" Naruto asked, looking straight at the chuckling Kiba. The brown-haired Inuzuka chuckled as he led a few, more obedient, dogs through the forest. "Honestly, mother told me to do this yesterday, but I forgot." He continued to chuckle as some of the dogs barked at him. The blonde shook his head. "You know your mom's not going to pay you, right?" he commented as he more or less dragged the dogs. He was getting a little irritated at them. "Would you guys walk on your own?" He yelled at them in anger as they whimpered and timidly walked ahead of the blonde. "Naruto-kun, don't yell at the dogs," Kurenai said from the sidelines, walking a medium-sized German shepherd. The blonde sighed and hung his head. "Sorry, sensei," Naruto said before whistling at the dogs. "Sorry, dogs. I didn't mean to snap at you," he apologized with a sad tone. The dogs barked loudly and one of them licked at the blonde's cheeks. The whiskered blonde chuckled as the dark gray dog continued to happily lick at his cheeks. "See, Naruto, they're not so bad. Even Sekamaru seems to like you, and Sekamaru doesn't like anybody," Kiba said with a grin. He and all of the dogs around them knew there was something off about the blonde. Something about him just gave off an aura of danger that just made them weary of being in his presence. He didn't know what it was, but maybe with the help of the dogs, he'll get an inkling of who his teammate was. That made him think about his other teammate, Sakura. He looked over at the pink-haired girl. She had a single dog, just like their sensei. Though, unlike their sensei, she was being dragged by the dog. The white-furred canine was rather excited, as she always was. It was obvious those two were polar opposites, neither ready for the other. "Let's get some exercise, yeah," Naruto said, letting go of all of his leashes as he laughed and ran around the area with the dogs, playfully chasing him. The number of canines chasing him increased as everyone let go of their own leashes. The blonde was having fun with the dogs. He couldn't believe that neither of them had a master of their own. While he was running, a dog appeared in front of him and he promptly tripped over the canine. His body flew through the air for a few feet before hitting the ground. "Dog pile." Kiba yelled loudly as the large bulldog flew through the air. "No no 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 no." The blonde continued to rant before the canine landed on him. Everyone chuckled as more dogs continued to jump into the pile, their tails wagging wildly. Sekamaru simply sat on his hunches near the pile of dogs, his tail wagging quickly. Sakura giggled loudly at the sight of all the dogs on the blonde. "It wasn't my doing, but that was a nice form of revenge," she said before covering her mouth a little to contain her laughs. "Okay team, let's get these dogs back to their homes. It's already been an hour." The raven-haired Jonin spoke softly as Kiba whistled to the dogs. They began removing themselves from Naruto and going back towards the group of humans. Naruto peeled himself from the floor, dirt all over his body, but a giant smile on his face. He looked at Sekamaru, who licked his cheek. "Thank you for no crushing me like they did," he told the dog, who barked happily as Naruto rubbed his head. The team began making their way back to the Inyazuka compound with the dogs happily leading the way. The 10-minute walk back was very calm compared to the walk from the compound. There at the entrance was Tsume with a large grin and her arms crossed. She watched as each of the dogs ran past her and into the nearby kennel. "Thank you for giving my dogs their exercise," she said with a feral smile. She then noticed a dog had stayed behind near Naruto. "Come on Sekamaru. This is where we part ways. I'll come by to play whenever I can, okay?" Naruto told the depressed dog. Tsume watched the exchange with a straight face. Sekamaru wasn't capable of being a ninkin. Because of his lack of chakra coils, he wasn't able to do any of the techniques other dogs were capable of. He wasn't the only one, each of the dogs they walked were the same, incapable of having a ninja companion. "Give me your paw Sekamaru," Naruto said, crouching down to the dog's eye level. Sekamaru rose his paw and placed it on the blonde's hand. "That's a promise," he said as the dark gray dog barked happily and quickly ran towards the kennel. "Thanks for giving the dogs their exercise Kurenai," the mother of Kiba said to the raven-haired sensei. Tsume had wild brown hair and really feral facial features, mostly in her eyes. She had red lipstick on her lips and matching red fangs on her cheeks. She was wearing her Jonin vest over her white low-cut blouse, giving her large D-cup puppy some breathing room. Her dark brown pants were rather tight-looking and were even taped at the ankles. "You're welcome Tsume-san." Though that was all Naruto's doing. He was the one that played with all the dogs. Kurenai said as the blonde became the center of attention once more. Though Naruto wasn't paying attention to the others. "Hey, your mom's kind of hot Kiba," Naruto whispered into the boy's ear. Kiba instantly grew angry and swung at the blonde, who easily sidestepped the swing. "Hey, cool it bro. You're causing a scene," Naruto said with a smirk as he looked around at the others. He blinked in confusion and waved at them. "Yo." Tsume smirked at the blonde before turning around. She turned her head to look at the team. "If I ever need these guys walked again, I know who to call," she said before leaving. "Kiba stop being lazy," were her last words before she entered the house. Kurenai smiled as she turned towards her team. She didn't know what that was all about between Naruto and Kiba. Judging from the Inyazuka's blush and the Uzumaki's smirk, it had to be embarrassing for Kiba. Only Sakura seemed to the normal person on her team, except for the fact that she was a fangirl. "Okay team, let's head to our training ground. We're going to begin our training. I just wanted you three to experience some D-rank missions first," she said as she began leading the way. Naruto walked alongside Kiba as Sakura walked ahead of them, beside Kurenai. "Stop thinking about my mom, Blondie." The brown-haired genin seethed through his teeth, just low enough for only them to hear. Naruto grinned as he looked at Kiba from the corner of his eyes. "Calm down dog breath. I only gave your mom a compliment that was only heard between us." "No, I'm more than sure she heard. You're lucky she didn't tear you apart right then and there." Kiba seethed back. "Ooh kinky huh?" Naruto replied with a smirk. Both Kiba and Akamaru growled loudly at Naruto's words. "What are you two boys talking about back there?" Kurenai asked, turning her head. Naruto smirked as the dogs continued to growl at him. "Oh nothing sensei. Just guy things," he said with a gentle smile. "When can we spar sensei?" Kiba asked, quickly snapping his gaze to their Jonin sensei. "I was just about to tell you three what we were going to train in today. I need to see your taijutsu capabilities firsthand to determine what I'm going to teach you," Kurenai said with a smile as they approached their training ground. "Can I spar with you sensei?" Sakura asked softly as she looked at Kurenai. "If I have any chance with Sasuke-kun, I need to show him I'm better than Ino Pig," she added with her clenched fist raised in front of her body. Naruto scoffed as he veered off away from them. "You have a lot of work to do if you want to impress Sasuke-kun," the blonde mocked as he leaned against one of the nearby wooden poles. "But if you want to get stronger, don't do it for him. He doesn't like you or any other girls that constantly chase him. You girls are nothing to him, nothing but distract." "Okay Naruto-kun, that's enough," Kurenai interrupted the blonde. She looked at Sakura who was glaring tearfully at the blonde and Naruto had an aloof look in his eyes. "Kiba can you please spar with Sakura-chan? Help her with whatever she needs." "Naruto," she said looking sternly at the boy. "Over here with me." The blonde kept his expression calm as he walked over to his sensei. She latched onto his ear and dragged him further from Kiba and Sakura. "Ow sensei, let go of my ear." "Come on sensei." "Ow." Naruto yelled as she finally let go of his ear. "Naruto, I don't want you verbally assaulting your teammates, or physically, or psychologically. That's not what a comrade does. A comrade supports their allies and assists them with whatever they need." Kurenai sternly spoke with her hands on her hips. The blonde sighed and crossed his arms. "I know sensei. I was just trying to get rid of the fangirl inside her. Her fascination with Sasuke is going to hamper her focus and hinder her future progress. I know you were thinking of this yesterday and I just wanted to help," Naruto said as he looked over at the pink-haired girl. Her moves were slow and sloppy compared to Kiba's slow movements. I understand, Naruto-kun. But again, we get to how we do that. Those two aren't as strong as you are, so we both need to help them. Now how about you show me what you can do? Don't hold back. Kurenai said, taking a few steps back and dropping into a basic stance. The blonde blinked at his sensei. Sorry sensei, I have to hold back. Don't you dare hold back. She yelled back, angry. I am a jonin, a kunoichi capable of taking care of myself. Don't you dare insult me like that. She said with surprising anger in her face. It set Naruto aback a bit in surprise. She asked for it, brat. Give it to her. The kitsune surprising stated in the blonde's head. Naruto sighed as he placed his hands on the ninja 2 hanging behind him. Okay sensei, but remember, you asked for it. Naruto said as his body slowly faded from view. This surprised Kurenai, who widened her senses even more. Her danger sense went off and she quickly dove sideways. She looked up at her student to see him holding his sword, it dripping in blood. That's when she clutched at her side in pain. A deep cut was along the side and blood was freely leaving the wound. Her eyes widened in shock at the wound until something entered her mind. She quickly put her fingers in the ram seal and cancelled the genjutsu, messing with her senses. Even though she ended the genjutsu, she could still feel the pain in her side, but there wasn't any blood. Another genjutsu? She muttered before ending the nerve-affecting illusion. She rose her head when it was over and she still couldn't find the blonde. Sorry I did that sensei. It's better to fight you with genjutsu though, don't you think? Naruto's voice echoed around the clearing. Kurenai narrowed her eyes as her fingers blurred through a few seals. When she was finished, Naruto soon appeared in front of her, his sword lying against her shoulder. That was an excellent reversal sensei. If I wasn't the container for the Kyuubi no Kitsune, I would, no doubt, be at your mercy right now. Naruto praised as he noticed a bit of sweat along the raven-haired beauty's brow. She got over her surprise quickly as she stayed on a single knee, having dropped to it when she thought she was going to bleed out. Your affinity for genjutsu is amazing. Much better than someone else I know. She said, panting a little. Though, you have to remember who the sensei is here. She said as her body began scattering in 1,000 flower petals. Naruto released a sigh as he shook his head. What did I just tell her? Naruto asked himself as the Kyuubi quickly disrupted his chakra. Kurenai was behind the blonde, with a kunai poised against his throat. Just concede defeat, Naruto-kun. A simple twitch could end your life right now. She said, her voice soft and worried. Press it deeper sensei. Naruto muttered softly. The jonin looked down at her charge and narrowed her eyes. She was surprised Naruto's body began vanishing from her side again. She pressed and wasn't surprised her kunai sliced air. She checked her senses and saw that they weren't being invaded at all, this was real. But, how did a genin just disappear from her senses like that? It was then that she sensed the genjutsu placed, not on her, but around her. By the time she cancelled the illusion, she noticed she was placed right in the middle of a tornado. Knowing about Naruto's use of layering illusions on top of each other, she tried to cancel the one she was in now. She was mistaken when a blade of wind got too close to her and sliced into her arm. She cursed herself and tried to think of a way out. If she was to use any fire techniques, she would no doubt burn. Any earth could protect her for a while before the strong wind tore it up and added shrapnel to the mix. She was going to have to take the risk. She was supposed to be his sensei and she needed to teach him a lesson. She flew through a series of hand seals and slammed her hands on the ground. The earth rumbled under her before she was propelled into the air by a rising earth wall. Another quick series and her body scattered into 1,000 flower petals. Naruto watched her escape with wide eyes. He was sure she would have ended the mock fight, but she chose to continue. You've got to admit it, she doesn't seem to quit. Kyuubi said as a tree seemed to materialize behind the blonde. Naruto narrowed his eyes as all of his senses were assaulted, but was it real or not? If it was a genjutsu, then he would have felt something wrong about his chakra flow. He looked back to see Kurenai leaning out of the tree she was melded with. Now it's time for you to quit, Naruto-kun. The blonde looked to see rope tied around his body instead of the branches he had saw seconds ago. The genjutsu was broken, but he was tied with rope. He could easily escape, but the look in his sensei's eyes told him that she didn't want to fight him anymore. Okay sensei. I know when I'm beaten. Naruto said, watching her smile softly. Thank you, Naruto-kun. She said while untying the whiskered genin. Naruto noticed her bandaged forearm had a small cut and softly smiled. His last technique was a mixture of illusion and ninjutsu. The tornado was fake, but the invisible blades of wind were real. When he noticed she was about to end the illusion part, he had one of the blades of wind slice into her arm, thus keeping things in his control and making her think it was really happening. But she still found a way out, a way Naruto wasn't all the way expecting. It was the first time he used that conjunction like that, and if it had been a real fight, it would have been the end for his opponent. The blonde felt lips on the top of his head and looked up to see Kurenai moving away from him. Thanks for the spar, Naruto-kun. I learned so much from it. She said with a large gorgeous smile. That was when Naruto noticed the flower still in her hair. He hadn't been paying much attention to Kurenai for the past few hours. Naruto smiled as he stood to his feet. As did I, sensei. I would love to do this again sometime. The blonde said before looking over at the other two. From the looks of things, Sakura seemed to be getting better since she started 15 minutes ago. Kiba still seemed the same, but that was to be expected. He wasn't being pushed at all. If he was learning anything from that spar, it was knowing how to hold back and learn how to read his opponent. Of course Sakura was beyond easy to read, but that's because nobody really taught her. We have enough time to continue training before I want you three to do another mission. So how about you go and teach Sakura a bit, I'll train with Kiba. The Jonin suggested, to which Naruto nodded. Okay sensei. The blonde said, walking over there. SN. Sakura swung her arms half a dozen times in hopes of hitting the Inuzuka anywhere. She couldn't, simply because Kiba was a better fighter than she was. He might have been dead last, but that was because he wasn't as intellectual as anyone else. In a physical sense, he was easily the third best in their class. He wouldn't even be the dead last if he wouldn't always try to fight Sasuke, who was clearly better than he was. Let me hit you, dope. The Pincat seethed, still trying to hit Kiba. Are you serious? Kiba questioned with a large grin. I'm having the time of my life right now. Now I know why Naruto likes to pick on everybody. Being untouchable is freaking hilarious. Kiba teased as he continued to weave through each of Sakura's strikes. This only seemed to make Sakura angrier as she swung harder before tripping on her own feet. Kiba laughed loudly at her dirt-covered face before a hand rested on his shoulder. He looked over to see Naruto standing there. Go train with Kurenai-sensei. The blonde said before walking over to Sakura. Need any help? He said, extending a hand to the girl. Sakura had tears in her eyes that her small amount of pride refused to let fall. I don't need your help. I can get stronger on my own. She said, picking herself up and dusting herself off. Of course. Naruto said, holding his hands up submissively. So how about I just give you a few pointers? Would that be okay with you? The blonde asked with a smile. Sakura kept her eyes on the ground as she thought about it. Suddenly she swung her fist at the blonde but wasn't surprised to see it hit air. Damn it, you perv, stay still. She said, angered. Naruto smiled wide. You're still thinking about yesterday. Come on baby, live in the now. Naruto said, moving quickly and slapping her in the ass again. Huh, maybe that clone was spot on. He thought as her blush came back full force. Hentai. She screamed as she began moving faster and faster. Her anger gives her a small increase in abilities. But her anger also hinders her abilities. There's even more openings now than before she got angry. Naruto thought, still breezing through her strikes. I know the perfect form of fighting style for you, Sakura-chan. But first, you need to master the basics. Naruto said, grabbing each of her wrists. She was expecting that and immediately tried to kick the blonde in the crotch. Naruto laughed and vanished from her sight. Still as feisty as ever, I like that. Naruto grinned as she continued to run at him. Stop touching my butt. She grunted with each word. Why would I stop doing that? It's nice, tight, and just so enjoyable. I see squats are the only attempt at physical exercise you do. Great for working the legs and ass. Surely you thought Sasuke would love to see something like that. I don't know about him, but I'm glad. Naruto chuckled as her blush kept getting darker and darker. Stop talking. She yelled, trying to tackle him to the ground, but again, went right through air. Naruto wagged his finger at the girl. I'm sure I would have liked what would have followed. But our team is right over there. I'm supposed to be helping you do something else. Naruto said with a wink. Is this me or you, Kyuubi? Naruto asked the fox after the wink. What? Sorry, I dozed off for a while. What's happening? Kyuubi asked with an audible yawn. Never mind. So this is me. Naruto thought with a mental shrug. Okay, enough playing around, Sakura-chan. Let's get you started on the basics of fighting, real fighting. Naruto said with a straight face. The pink-haired genin wanted to try to hit the blonde more, but the serious look on his face made her stop. She nodded her head and got to her feet. What do you want to teach me, Naruto Irobaka? She asked, dusting herself off again. First, I need to get you to a proficient level of Taijutsu. When I feel that you're ready, I'll begin teaching you what I have planned. Until then, I don't want to hear any screaming or complaints from you about anything I do. Understand? Naruto asked with his arms crossed. You're actually going to teach her? The fox asked, surprised by the blonde's actions. I have to, furball. I can't have her being the weakest link capable of breaking the chain that holds us together. Naruto responded with a mental shrug. Don't even mention anything about chains to me, the fox growled in annoyance. Or else you'll eat me. Got it. Naruto thought before Kurenai called them over to her. I guess we'll have to do this some other time. Naruto said before motioning the Pincat to walk in front of him. Stop looking at my butt. She seethed out. The blonde chuckled at her words. That sounds like a complaint to me. Naruto said, his eyes still on her rear. Sakura grumbled and started walking faster. What's wrong with you today, brat? Do you realize that there's better humans to be ogling than that one? Naruto chuckled again. I do, but she's here right now. Plus, I love teasing her. If I do this to Hinata, she might just faint before I could get a word out of her. I don't know. She might do the same thing as Sakura. I'm not going to do that to Kurenai, well not now. Someone that obviously hates perverts, like she does, requires some time. I don't want to end up in a nasty illusion. It doesn't matter if I can break out of it or you break out of it for me, it'll still be a nasty experience. Whatever. Do whatever you want, I'm going back to sleep. The Kyuubi yawned as the mental connection between them vanished again. Just then they reached the other two. Kiba had a few dirt marks on his clothes and face, and Kurenai had a satisfied smile on her face. Okay, you three, I want to teach you about the several uses for chakra. Like, did you know, you could climb trees using nothing but your feet in chakra? She asked with a smile. The chorus of no echoed from Kiba and Sakura, while Naruto simply nodded. Of course you know this, Naruto-kun. You know, you're making it really hard to teach you things. Kurenai said with her hands on her hips. The blonde softly smiled at her pseudo-anger. Oh sensei, don't be like that. This is only the first day we spent as a team. I'm sure, down the road, you'll find something to teach me. Okay. Until then, you'll be my assistant for these two. Okay? She asked with a bright smile. He chuckled at her happiness and leaned over to Kiba. What happened to her? She's super happy for some reason. He whispered in the boy's ear. I think she's happy she can teach somebody on her team. That and she's glad Sakura and I actually need her guidance. Kiba whispered back. Naruto nodded and smiled softly at the raven-haired jonin. So tree walking. How do you do that, sensei? Sakura asked, failing to hear what the boys said to each other. Kurenai smiled as she led them to a tree. First, you find a nice thick tree and channel some amount of chakra to the soles of your feet. She said, channeling chakra to her feet. Next, you place your foot on the tree until it sticks. She said, trying to remove her foot but found it stuck. If you have too much chakra, you explode off, too little and you slip. I learned that the hard way. Naruto added with an embarrassing chuckle. The other two laughed and Kurenai quickly shushed them. He's right. Now pay attention. The way I learned is that you want to do things slowly. Running up quickly would be good, but if you're not successful, the results will be painful either way. She said as she began walking up the tree. See, easy peasy. She said before dropping down. She smirked at Naruto's frown and patted him on his head. Go on, Naruto-kun, give them another example. She said, scooting him towards the tree. He quickly walked to the tree and started walking up it. When you do it enough times, it starts becoming second nature. It's the same concept when you're walking on. Naruto was quickly silenced when Kurenai clamped her hand over his mouth. They don't need to know about that right now. Let's just have them focus on trees for now. She said, giggling at their confused faces. Naruto, on the other hand, was in heaven. The feel of Kurenai's hand over his mouth was absolutely soft to the touch. He just had to kiss it, hopefully she wouldn't notice. She looked at him and removed her hand from his mouth with a faint blush on her cheeks. She put her hand on his shoulders and shoved him off the tree. That's enough from you. She said as Naruto chuckled all the way down to the ground where he flipped and landed on his feet. Alright you two, get your own tree and practice. Kurenai said before dropping to the ground. Getting training from a Jinjutsu specialist, they're gonna go through hell. Naruto commented with a shudder. Medics are worse compared to what I'm going to put them through. The woman replied with a smile. The blonde nodded his head. Yup, they are brutal with chakra control exercises. He said, shaking his head slowly. Sakura already has the hang of it, but that's because she barely has chakra as it is. Naruto said, pointing at the happy pinkette. Excellent, Sakura-chan. Now I want you to keep running up and down the tree until you can't anymore. We need to build your chakra reserves up. Kurenai praised loudly. Speaking of Sakura. What were you two doing over there? She said regularly. The whiskered genin chuckled and rubbed his head. I was just getting a feel of her baseline. That means two things. Kyuubi chimed in with a chuckle. I plan on teaching her how to utilize Jinjutsu while, at the same time, fighting someone hand to hand. Naruto said, crossing his arms. Kurenai rose an eyebrow. You mean the Sakaku no Ken? Illusion fist. The blonde nodded his head. Not surprising, you know that style, with you being a Jinjutsu specialist and all. I'm surprised you know it. It takes years of muscle memory to fight with it for 5 minutes. She said in surprise. It doesn't take that long. I only needed a total of 6 months to master it. I didn't even have to try all that hard. Naruto said with a scratch of his head. It took me 3 years to master it. She nearly yelled. Wow, sensei. Maybe you should have taken breaks from missions to master your abilities. Naruto said, looking over at Kiba and seeing him flying off a tree. So you just spent the full time working on nothing but that? Kurenai asked inquisitively. Basically yeah. Kiba, stop getting angry. Slow down and go a foot at a time. He yelled. Whatever blondie. Kiba yelled back in anger before rocketing off the tree again. The blonde shook his head when a thought came to his mind. Hey sensei, do you know where Anko-chan is? He asked crossing his arms. I don't know. Kurenai trailed off before she snapped her head to Naruto in surprise. You know Anko-chan? Wow, you guys belong together. She said in slow fascination. What's that supposed to mean? Naruto asked with a playful glare. Kurenai held her hands up in surrender. I didn't mean nothing by that. I was just saying you guys are like two peas in a pod. You're both crazy as hell. She said with a giggle, imagining both Naruto and Anko bearing down on her menacingly with fire in their eyes. Naruto chuckled and shrugged. Well, I have no doubt in some alternate dimension somewhere, we're actually siblings. We're just like siblings now, so what would be the difference? Blood. Kurenai simply answered with a giggle. Kiba blasted off the tree again, making the two of them sigh. I'll try to prevent him causing himself any more brain damage. Naruto sighed before walking over to the Inuzuka. Kurenai smiled at the retreating blonde. Maybe it was better for her that she didn't have a full team. She had only just become a Jonin a year ago and she was already taking on this kind of responsibility. Maybe she was crazy like Naruto and Anko. Hours later, it was nightfall and the rookie Team 7 had added 2 more missions to their growing list of completed missions. Excellent work you three. How about we split for now? Same time tomorrow morning, don't be late. Kurenai said before departing in a swirling display of dancing leaves. I don't know about you two, but I got business to do. I'll see you two tomorrow. Naruto said as he walked down the dirt road while stretching his arms. You're still going to train with me tomorrow, right Naruto-iro? Sakura asked, cupping her hands over her mouth. Yeah sure. Oh, and cut your hair, it's too long. Naruto said lazily waving his hand. The pink-haired Genin gasped. Cut my hair? What's wrong with my hair? She asked her only remaining teammate who's simply been looking at the night sky. Didn't you hear him? He said it's too long. Listen to him, he's the better fighter in this group of ours. Kiba said before grinning widely at her. Don't make yourself bald. He laughed, holding his stomach in the process. Sakura narrowed her eyes and slammed her fist down on Kiba's head. Akamaru barked a few times before Sakura picked him up and held him to her face. You want one too? She asked with a scary face. The white-furred dog simply whimpered a few times in response. Sakura smiled and set him down next to his chuckling partner. I guess I'll have mother cut my hair. Sakura muttered before walking home. The brown-haired Inuzuka got up and set Akamaru on his head. I guess it's only us tonight, huh Akamaru? Kiba said with the canine yapping back a response. You're right. It's not too late to train. We have 2 choices, join Naruto or go home. Akamaru growled a bit before barking another response. What, still? Come on, he's a nice guy. Kiba said with a shake of his head as Akamaru growled at him for it. He barked a few more times before Kiba grabbed Akamaru and held him to his face, like Sakura had him a few minutes ago. You know I can't do that, we just made a truce yesterday. If he sees me, and I have no doubt that he will, he'll get angry and nobody wants that. Kiba said, shaking his head no after the pup barked a few more times. The Inuzuka smiled at the dog's whimper. Finally, you understand. Now, can we go home and train for a while? We have a lot of work to do before we can reach Naruto's level. Kiba said as he ran home to the Inuzuka compound. SNSN. Naruto yawned a bit as he entered the training ground. It was completely vacant save for a lone female, standing on top of the lake. She was a thing of beauty, with the light of the moon shining off the lake surface and illuminating her. Her back was to him, and her long light blonde hair was draped down her back, going down to the middle of her back. Even with most of her hair in the way, Naruto could tell she was wearing a Jonin-styled flak jacket. The young blonde also noticed that her biker shorts were extended back a decent distance. Her legs were toned, and her calves were wrapped in tape that went down to her ankles. Naruto's eyes shot back up to her katana and wakizashi set of swords. Who is this woman? Kyuubi asked with a hard tone. No idea. The whiskered blonde thought as he opened his eyes further. The woman turned her head a little to look at him. Her violet eyes shined bright and her lips were in a smirk. Finally you've arrived. I've been waiting for you for an hour. Both Naruto and the Kyuubi blinked in confusion at her words. Look lady, I'm flattered. But I have training I need to do. So if you can leave, that'll be swell. Naruto said with a yawn. The woman ignored the rudeness and fully turned around. Ooh, I got an idea. How about I train with you? I would love to see you in action. She said with a fascinating tone. I say go for it brat. Just consider her a training buddy since you won't have a lot of time for private training anymore. The kitsune said. I just thought about something Kyuubi. You've been talking a lot since I let you out of that boulder. Are you always this chatty, or is today some special day or something? Naruto thought while crossing his arms. I'll have you know that I haven't even been talking a lot today. And plus, what else is there to do in here? It's just an endless field of nothing in your head. Perhaps if you made it better in here, I wouldn't be so chatty. The tailed beast yelled in annoyance. Alright. What did I say about those panties of yours? Naruto asked with a chuckle as he quickly thought of some things to distract the large kitsune for a while. You just added trees in here. The Kyuubi yelled in anger. Well shit, what else do you want? Naruto yelled back. I don't know, how about some other shit for me to destroy? Imagine your village or something. Hell no, you're not destroying my village. Naruto glared at the fox, having quickly entered his mind. The kitsune towered over him with a glare of his own. He bore his teeth and sneered at the short blonde. The two had a glaring contest that seemed to go on for hours. Fine, you big baby. Naruto yelled as a countless amount of buildings began rising around them. Minutes later a large mountain rose and 4 faces were etched into it. Have fun. Naruto growled as his body faded from sight. When the whiskered genin returned to reality, he found the mystery woman right in front of him, waving her hand in his face. He immediately took a few steps back in surprise. What the fuck? He nearly shouted. The woman giggled and backpedaled as well. Oopies, sorry I scared you. You just spaced out for a bit. You have fun talking with the Kyuubi? She asked with a smile. The genin widened his eyes a bit before closing them and shaking his head. Of course she knows, she's a jonin. Naruto told himself before reopening his eyes. No, I didn't have fun. Now who the hell are you lady and what do you want with me? Naruto asked putting a hand on his ninja too. She giggled with a hand in front of her mouth. I already told you, silly bones. I want to play, she said, extending the last word as she twirled around. She's like a small child. Naruto thought in fascination, since her appearance was a real contradicting issue. I thought you wanted to train with me? Naruto asked with a raised eyebrow. She gasped in delight. So you were listening to me? She exclaimed as she twirled some more in pure joy. Wow, she's totally carefree. It's kind of creepy, even for me. The Kyuubi stated, making Naruto nod in agreement. Naruto sighed when she just kept spinning around. Can we get started now? Or do you want to spin some more? The genin asked while slowly unsheathing his sword. She stopped spinning with a beautiful smile on her lips. Okay. She exclaimed happily before she began spinning again. Naruto narrowed his eyes in annoyance and ran at her. He swung his sword and was surprised to see her step out of the way of it. She giggled as she continued to spin in delight. The short blonde grunted as he swung his sword more, each time hitting nothing but air. He growled in anger and jumped back. He channeled some wind and released a crescent blade of wind. He watched as the woman unsheathed her katana and swung upwards and cancelled out his blade of wind. When Naruto landed and grinned widely. She's better than me. He thought in amazement. A worthy opponent. A worthy opponent. Worthy opponent. Worthy opponent. His thoughts began leaking through his mouth as he couldn't help but widen his smile. Finally, a worthy opponent. Naruto yelled as he vanished from the spot. The female blonde opened her mouth in surprise before instinctually blocking Naruto's slash. She giggled as she pushed him off. She watched the younger blonde vanish again and reappear behind her. She twirled and deflected it and again he vanished from her sight. She giggled loudly as she continued twirling around. This is fun. She said in between her happy giggling. The Uzumaki continued to use his regular speed to look for openings in her guard. It was extremely difficult to accomplish with her continuous spinning. Okay, so her spinning is a purpose. He thought reappearing above her. She rose her katana and blocked his strike again. She winked at him and swung her wakizashi at his midsection. Naruto vanished just in time and narrowed his eyes at her. Okay. He thought as he ran at her straight forward. He quickly blinked out of sight and appeared inside her guard, ready to pierce her clean through. Somehow she had anticipated this and was already jumping away. Aren't you getting dizzy? Naruto yelled in annoyance. A little. She responded with more giggles. Well, I'm tired of it. He said, pointing his finger at her. A white flash later and Naruto was glad to see she was gone. Haha, missed me, she exclaimed in a sing-song voice from behind Naruto. Naruto shook his head. Of course I did. He muttered, pinching the bridge of his nose. I'll just have to try harder. He thought while sheathing his sword and waving at the lady. Well, it's been fun, but I'm getting sleepy. He said as he began walking away. She stopped spinning and watched him walk away. Wait, don't leave. We didn't finish playing. She said as she jogged over to him. Didn't you hear me? I said I'm sleepy. He said with a smile. She appeared in front of him with her arms stretched outwards. No, we're not done playing. She said sternly. The younger blonde immediately jumped her and they landed on the ground. You tricked me. She giggled out. Naruto held her hands above her head as he straddled her stomach. Who are you and why are you bothering me? Naruto yelled in annoyance. My name is Sukino Haddock, Jonin of Konoha no Sado. I like reading, training and just having fun. I dislike perverts, but since you're cute, I'll make an exception." She winked again. "What?" Naruto asked with a raised eyebrow. "I'm 22 right now, but since we have the same birthday, we're exactly 10 years apart in age." "Hi, birthday buddy." She giggled. Naruto rolled his eyes as he released her hands. "All of this because we're birthday buddies. Wow, you're one strange girl," he said, crossing his arms. She smiled as she reached up and pulled him into a surprise hug. "Unless you're going to do something, would you perhaps get off me? You're not exactly light as a feather," she whispered into his ear. The young blonde smirked as he was released from the hug. "I don't know about that. This might just turn out to be my new favorite seat," he said, holding her wrists again and putting them back over her head. "Okay, fine by me. But if Nai-san catches you, he might end up killing you." She giggled out after planting a kiss right on his forehead protector. "And he's very protective when he wants to be," she added with another giggle. Naruto blinked as he slowly released her wrists. "Oh yeah, I thought I heard Haddock earlier. I'll get up now," the Kyuubi container said as he slowly got up. Sukino stayed on the floor and giggled. "Haha, tricked you. He wouldn't have caught you because I'm not really here. I'm a clone, bye-bye," she said before dispelling, shocking Naruto at the drifting smoke. "Wow, that girl was really strange," Kyuubi said after Naruto stayed still for 5 minutes. "You can say that again," Naruto thought. "Wow, that girl was really strange," the kitsune repeated with a laugh. The blonde shook his head at the fox as he turned around. She was really strong too and had an affinity with wind. A strong one at that, Naruto thought while walking out of the training ground. "Oh, you noticed that too." She had a strange technique with her spinning. It was like a strong air current was around her, allowing her to spinning faster. She used it like a Hyuga's Byakugan, giving her a complete 360-degree of vision. Kyuubi opinionated. Naruto nodded as he took to the roofs of the village. "I know. Every time I tried to attack, it was like the current would move my sword in front of hers. The only time she stopped spinning was when I attacked from above." The blonde replayed the event in his head. That's what her short sword was for. For anyone that exploited that fact would be wide open to the attack. "You're very lucky you were faster than she realized. Did you see the Anbu tattoo on her shoulder?" "I did. She probably just left the Anbu some time ago, maybe a month or two. I haven't even heard of her until today, and that's a first for me. You know, considering who her brother is." Naruto responded as he dropped down in front of his door. "Tomorrow is just around the corner. I'd best get to sleep now, since I really didn't get to train how I wanted to tonight," Naruto said, removing his everything. "Right. Well, I'm going back to decimating this village," the Kyuubi said with roaring laughter as the connection was broken. Naruto shook his head as he stepped into the shower. "The people around me are weird," he muttered. 2 weeks later, Naruto smiled as felt strength behind Sakura's punches had increased a lot since the beginning of their training a few weeks ago. He grabbed her arm and tossed her overhead and was immediately pressed by Kiba's advancement. Kiba looked the same he always did, but he had discarded his coat when Naruto kept grabbing it and tossing him with it. So now he was wearing a dark gray shirt with mesh armor underneath. He kept his dark gray pants and added another ninja pouch to the other side of his hip. The blonde had to be constantly on his toes because at random times, Akamaru would pop into view trying to hit him as well. "You're getting really faster, Kiba. It's impressive that you could progress so much in only 2 weeks," Naruto said before sweeping Kiba off his feet with a simple movement and roundhouse kicking him away from him. He formed a single seal and wind immediately circled around him. "Futen. K's Kai. Wine sphere." Naruto turned and caught the leaping dog in a swirling prison. "Gotcha." He smiled before throwing it right in Kiba's direction. He looked up to see Sakura falling down with a poised fist. He sidestepped her attack and quickly patted her on her head before she lashed out with a wide swing of her arm. "You're doing good for someone who didn't know how to really fight 2 weeks prior," he said, backpedaling away from her. Sakura had changed the most during the past 2 weeks. Her hair had been cut like Naruto suggested and now it just reached past her shoulders. She had changed her dress to an armored red shirt for the same reason Kiba removed his coat. She had also changed the color to her shorts, they're now being black. She was also equipped with dark gray gloves that she only used whenever she fought. "Finally at genin level," Naruto added as he stuck fast. With 2 precise strikes, Sakura lost control of both of her arms. "Seem familiar?" He smirked as she yelled in anger. Keep that anger in check. Do what I taught you and you'll be out in minutes. Until then, rest and think," he said before substituting as spinning Kiba tore into a large log. "Be careful, Kiba-kun, Sakura-chan was right there." Kurina yelled from the sidelines as she watched her student spar with Naruto. "She's right, Kiba." Sakura yelled, kicking the brown-haired genin in his shin. "Sakura, what did I say about that anger?" Naruto asked with a smirk, chuckling at the wincing Inuzuka. "We need a plan against that pervert." Sakura whispered as she slowly circled her chakra inside of her coils. She had the best chakra control between the two and could use it to soothe her muscles. The blonde had told her that she could easily become a medic or a genjutsu specialist with her aptitude for controlling her chakra. Well, you're the smart one. Think of something before he decides to continue this. Kiba replied with a wince as he rubbed his stomach a bit. He could still feel Naruto's foot trying to make him throw up. Just give me a minute. She nearly screamed at him while she racked her brain for a solution. Meanwhile, Naruto walked over to Kurenai with his hands behind his head. I'm proud of you, sensei. You turned these kids into excellent genin. He praised with a smile. It is my job. She replied with a smile. I just guided them and taught them how to use them when it was appropriate. Plus, you were a big help. Things would have been slower without you helping me. She said, rubbing his head. I'm only really teaching them one thing each. Though, Kiba is taking longer than I thought to grasp the concept of using wind chakra. Maybe I should wait until later for that, but Sakura is doing way better than I thought she would. That brain of hers is amazing, though not better than Shikamaru's. Naruto praised his teammates. Kurenai nodded. When was the last time she talked about Sasuke-san? Who? Naruto asked with a laugh. Yesterday though. That was only because we saw them in passing and she kind of reverted back to being a fangirl. Though she only called his name and waved. Naturally, he didn't even pay attention to her. I was glad to see that she seemed to brush his rejection off better than he brushed off her affection. Our little girl is growing up. Naruto said playfully with tears at the corner of his eyes. Kurenai giggled and patted him on his shoulder. Stop being silly in the middle of a fight. She said playfully. The blonde chuckled as he turned around. Sure, sensei. Can we go on a mission after this? He asked while turning his head. Yup, D rank, like always. She smiled. The blonde bristled at her reply. No, I'm tired of doing chores now. We did like 100 of D ranks. Kurenai put her hands on her hips with a soft scoff. Why don't you stop exaggerating, young man? We're not even close to that number. She said. Naruto crossed his arms. Well, it felt like that much. He mumbled as he turned back towards the others. What was that? Kurenai asked in a very motherly way. I didn't say nothing. Naruto said as he noticed the others ran into the forest. The hell? He muttered as he quickly followed. As soon as he entered the foliage, a shower of kunai fell above him. He shimmered out of the way and quickly continued his pursuit of his retreating teammates. He really didn't know where the kunai came from, but he quickly realized he was in a genjutsu. Very sneaky of her. I didn't even teach her any genjutsu. Very sneaky, sensei. Naruto thought as Kiba quickly shot from his left and right at the same time. Again Naruto shimmered out of the way. Excellent use of the surroundings, Kiba. See, Kurenai sensei is teaching you how to think better. Naruto said before Kiba and the transformed Akamaru continued to rocket in and out of Naruto's sight. Kiba was going faster and faster until he was moving at the speed of a Chunin. The blonde turned his head and watched one of the transformed Kiba bounce off of the tree and quickly jumped to another to come at the blonde again. We have to get ready for a C-rank mission later, so I'm not going to hurt you too bad. Naruto said while he went through some hand seals. Futon. Shajike. Impact wave, Naruto said as both of the Kibas came at him at the same time. Their bodies were quickly halted in midair and then rocketed backwards. 2 down, 1 to go. Naruto said as he resumed running through the forest. A minute later he came up to a waterfall to see Sakura knee-high in the water, her shirtless back to him. She turned her head and screamed loudly, pressing her hands to her chest. You perv, get out of here. Naruto simply rose his eyebrow and tried to cancel the illusion he must have been in. He quickly noticed the rope down near his foot and was immediately ensnared in the trap. Wow, what an excellent trap. Very random and genius, I was not expecting this. The upside-down blonde praised the pinkette. Alright, now stop looking over here. I have to go get my shirt over there. She said since she had to leave a bit of clothing over there or Naruto wouldn't believe what he saw. It's not like you have anything to hide. Naruto as he continued to swing a bit in the air. Tick marks appeared on Sakura's large forehead as she stomped her way towards him. Oh crap. He thought as he quickly sliced through the rope with a blade of wind and flipped over. Okay, Sakura-chan. Calm down, I didn't mean it. You're just a late bloomer. Naruto held up his hands in surrender. She pulled her arm back and threw her punch. Naruto smirked as he quickly caught it and turned her around, pressing her bare back to him and crossing her arms in front of her. Keep your anger in check, Sakura-chan. You were wide open. Now go put your shirt on before Kiba sees you, or maybe you should think about wrapping your chest if you don't want to see you topless. Still don't have anything to hide though. Naruto added with a chuckle as he vanished from the area. Naruto appeared back with Kurenai with a smile. Training's over for today. The others should be here in a few. I wonder what kind of mission we'll get. Naruto mused with his hands above his head. Kurenai shrugged her shoulders. It could be anything from searching for something, escorting someone and even helping someone do something. They're very much like D ranks, except we'll be doing it outside of the village. Kurenai explained. The blonde rose an eyebrow as the others walked out of the surrounding foliage. Really, then can we get a B rank? He asked with a chuckle. She giggled and rubbed his head again. No, I'm barely allowing you to do a C rank. Don't make things difficult, Naruto-kun. She said as the others walked up to them. Is it true, sensei? Are we finally going to do a C rank? Kiba asked excitedly. The Jonin sighed and put her hands on her hips. I guess I am. I do wish you had at least a month of training before we try to C rank. But this guy gets antsy when doing chores. Kurenai said as Kiba wrapped an arm around Naruto's shoulders and laughed. Good job, man. He thanked as the blonde joined the laughter. We're more than ready for a mission, sensei. Plus, it's like we have 2 Jonin on our team. She said as she too wrapped an arm around Naruto's shoulder. Kurenai giggled seeing her students acting goofy and carefree. Alright then you 3, let's go get ourselves a mission. She said with a smile as the 3 cheered. Dirt Road Konoha. Kurenai and her team were heading towards the Hokage Tower in hopes of receiving their first C-rank mission. The raven-haired Jonin walked behind her genin team with a small smile on her face. The team she's had for barely 2 weeks were quickly becoming the best things to ever happen in her life. It was along the lines of when she was first promoted as a Jonin many a time ago. She chuckled to herself as her team continued to converse ahead of her. I, for one, thinks it's great Sakura-chan is getting better with her skills. Now we won't have to worry about saving her on this mission. Kiba said with a cocky smile on his face. It's going to be a piece of cake for me. He added, his smile growing as Akamaru yapped in agreement. First of all, dog breath, if I really wanted to, I could beat you in a fight easily. With your small attention span, that would be a piece of cake. Sakura said with a smirk instead of a bash to his head. Ooh. Naruto instigated with a laugh. You just going to let her say that, Kiba? The blonde said, laughing at the Inyazuka's small blush of embarrassment. That's why you don't have anything to hide. Kiba mumbled under his breath, causing Sakura to grow a tick mark on her forehead. It was clear she heard what he said when Kiba was sent crashing into the ground by her fist. It ain't my fists. She smirked looking at a chuckling blonde. You want some too? She asked, cracking her knuckles. Anytime you want to have fun. Naruto answered before Kurenai grabbed both of their ears. She sighed, her previous thoughts of them being dashed big time. You 3 are becoming a big headache now. Can I please get my team back? Apparently I may have left them at the training ground. She said as Kiba stumbled to his feet, a hand on his head, which now sported a big knot on it. Are you alright, Kiba-kun? The sensei asked with a sweet voice. Yes, sensei, I'm okay. She just caught me off guard. Kiba said, consoling a growling Akamaru. The pincat being held by Kurenai quietly took the pain brought to her by her sensei and glared at the blonde. Kurenai also looked at the blonde before he literally vanished from her sight. Naruto, bring your butt back over here. She said with a straight face, not looking at anything in particular. Naruto nervously chuckled as he walked out of the nearby alley. Sorry, sensei. I'll be a better role model for the kids. He said, sheepishly kicking a small rock. Yeah, great role model work not having my back, bro. Kiba grumbled before getting back to the journey at hand. Like I would want you for a role model. Sakura huffed and followed Kiba. Kurenai rested her hands on her hips and looked at the blonde. I said sorry, sensei. You have to forgive me, that's how much of a good person you are. Naruto said before following his teammates. Kurenai watched him leave, her eyes narrowed to slits. Sometimes I hate being so nice. She thought out loud, reluctantly forgiving the blonde before she followed her team. They weren't that far from the tower now, it was actually in sight right now. Minutes later, Team 7 arrived at the tower. They immediately began their walk to the mission hall. Another minute went by before they walked in. There, behind a large desk was 5 Chunin, handling the distribution of missions to various shinobi and kunoichi. Among the group was Iruka, causing the blonde to smirk. With how much Iruka hated him, they might even get a B rank. If he was there by himself, it would be clear he would be getting an S rank. Hey, Iruka-sensei. Kiba boisterously yelled out, happy to see the man who allowed him to become a genin. Hey Kiba-kun, Sakura-chan. Naruto. Iruka greeted before flatly looking at the blonde. Good to see you too, Iruka. Naruto smirked before Kurenai laid a hand on his head. Hello, Iruka-san. We're here to get a mission, C rank, these 3 earned it. She said as Naruto lowly grumbled under his breath. But the amount of witnesses in the room, a show of disobedience on his part might get him and Kurenai in trouble. Especially with the Hokage so close. Hello, Naruto-kun. Word along the grapevine is you want a C rank mission. The Sandaime said walking into the room from behind the team. Wow, word travels fast these days. It's only been 5 seconds, Oji-san. Naruto chuckled, checking the invisible watch on his wrist. Hi, Hokage-sama. You know, as well as I, how much the team is ready. They've grown in the past 2 weeks. Kurenai said, rubbing Naruto's head, causing him to fuss a bit. Hiruzen smiled and nodded his head. Yes, Kurenai-chan, you're right. They sure have. The Sandaime said, smiling at the blonde. Kiba leaned over to Sakura and whispered in her ear. Is it just me, or are they only talking about Naruto? Seems like. Sakura whispered back with a twitch of her brow. Meanwhile, Iruka was digging through a pile of scrolls, all of them C rank. Do this job long enough and you could tell which mission had the highest chance of escalation and which didn't. He smiled when he removed a good prospect of escalation. If memory served him right, then according to the log, this mission had a nice and high chance of causing lots of trouble for the team. It was a shame really, but it was necessary if Naruto died on the mission. Here you go Team 7. Your first C-rank mission, break a leg. The scarred Chunin said before tossing the scroll at them, with the blonde catching it. Isn't that phrase only said to actors in theater? To give them good luck? Sakura asked with a raised eyebrow, wondering why Iruka was glaring at the blonde like that. Same meaning, different business. Iruka covered up quickly with a smile on his face. Don't worry Iruka, I'll break a leg. It just won't be mine. The blonde said with a chuckle as he gave the scroll to Kurenai. Yeah, whatever. Can we just do the mission already? Kiba brashly exclaimed, clearly annoyed they weren't already leaving the village. Naruto smirked and crossed his arms. Good idea Kiba, can we go sensei? He said looked at the Jonin. Kurenai was busy looking over the scroll, but hearing the question, she rose her eyes. She could easily detect something was wrong in the room, some form of tension and hostility. She looked around before glancing at the Hokage. Your choice Kurenai-chan. Hiruzen said before finally walking to his spot behind the large desk. She blinked before looking at each of her students. Sakura was tapping her foot absent-mindedly, a perfect indicator she was deeply in thought. Kiba was clearly annoyed, judging from his outburst earlier. And Naruto, well, he was looking directly at her, a simple smirk on his face. One of these days she was going to get in that little head of his and find out what he's thinking. She smirked back at him before smiling. Let's get prepared team. She said loud enough to break Sakura out of her thoughts. The team, minus Naruto, cheered having officially obtained their first C-rank mission. Alright comrades, I estimate we'll spend at least 3 hours on the road to get to the destination. From there, we'll determine how long this mission will take, but just to be safe, pack for at least a week. Once we get to the south gate, either I or sensei will teach you how to seal your things. The blonde said looking at his team who nodded, knowing full well to trust Naruto's estimates, since they had a high chance of being right. Understood Naruto. Kiba and Sakura nodded before they turned toward the door. Again, Kurenai laid her hand on Naruto's head. Good job Naruto, keep this up and you'll make Chunin before I can even teach you anything. She said with a half smile. At that moment, another rookie team had already entered the room. It was Sasuke, Hinata and Shino, led by Kakashi otherwise known as Team 8. Sounds like you guys are going on a C-rank mission. Pretty big step you're taking. Kakashi said with an easy tone. It's nothing I can't handle. Kurenai replied with an easy tone of her own. I know you guys are jealous we're the first ones of our class to get a big mission. Kiba bragged with a smirk. Being jealous for a mission with a chance of potential danger is illogical for rookies fresh out of the academy. Shino responded stoically. Plus, a dope like you will most likely end up dead in the first 5 minutes. It's not like you have anybody useful on your team. Sasuke scoffed with his usual cocky attitude. Listen you emo bast. Sakura's angry words were cut off by the blonde's hand covering her mouth. Keep that anger of yours in check Sakura. Now isn't the time to lash out at fellow Konoha shinobi. We have a mission to do. Naruto said removing his hand. Sasuke glared at the blonde with pure hatred in his eyes. It's not like it would have mattered. A weak girl like Sakura couldn't even touch my hair. Sasuke stated, lifting a single strand of hair to prove his point. Naruto smirked and slowly pushed his team through the door. I'll let you think that you coming sensei. Naruto asked turning his head to a smirking Kurenai. Sure Naruto-kun. Until next time Kakashi-san. She said before walking out of the room, not before smiling at a blushing Hinata. The blonde stayed behind with the other team. Until next time. Naruto winked to the Hyuga heiress, causing her blush to darken and almost causing her to faint in surprise. The blonde smirked and body flickered back to his team. Naruto sure did grow up. Kakashi turned his head to look at a smiling Hokage. Yes he did. The scarecrow replied. So I was thinking of getting a group of D ranks for the team to do. Of course. Hiruzen spoke with a smile as he gathered the missions. SNSN. 10 minutes passed by before Naruto arrived at the south gate. He was finally wearing his stolen vest again, with a few adjustments to the article. He tore off the collar and the pockets on the outside. He placed seals on the inside to strengthen the material and to also weigh him down. That vest now weighed a good 200 pounds, nothing the blonde couldn't handle. He also had the seal on each of his ankles to further increase his speed without the use of swift release. So he rose the weight on those a little bit. The blonde kept his attire underneath the flak jacket the same, though he was a little annoyed the flak jacket was too light a green for his dark green cargo pants. There's no way the Hokage would let me take one from a Jonin. Naruto thought with a scrunch of his face. I say go for it. The mayhem that'll follow would be far more entertaining. The fox spoke with a chuckle. The blonde audibly scoffed as he leapt on top of the gate. I doubt it'll be as mayhemy as you think. He thought as he laid down on his back. It doesn't matter to me if you're matching or not. As long as you don't get yourself killed I won't have to eat you. The Kyuubi said with a roar. The blonde sighed. Don't you have a village to destroy or something? He asked with an annoyed tone. I've done that more than 36 times already. It got boring after the first time. Some genius forgot to add people in here. The large fox complained. Naruto let out a loud, audible sigh in annoyance. Are you serious? It's bad enough I'm letting you destroy Konoha in there, now you want to add the citizens to the mix. Hell no. The blonde sternly declined. Come on brat, I mean, Naruto. Destroying a defenseless village provides no challenge at all. The only problem I have is the silence, other than crumbling buildings. There's no attacks coming at me, no shouts of anger, no scent of blood from the people I kill. No excitement at all. The fox complained to a stoic blonde. Naruto stared at the kitsune, currently curled up in the middle of the destroyed village. Fire scattered all around him, a large trench where the Hokage mountain used to be. I let you use my chakra anytime you wanted. The fox bartered. The blonde rose an eyebrow. I can't just take it from you? He asked as the Kyuubi shook his head. Well technically you can. But my anger and hatred will leak into your mind and corrupt you. With my permission, the negative emotions will not affect you. After you build up a high tolerance for them, of course. The more tails you want to use the more experience you need with my chakra. The fox explained with his tail swing behind him absent-mindedly. Naruto blinked in surprise. Wow, that's really generous of you then. I guess you really aren't a bad guy. The blonde said with a soft smile. Oh no, I'm still a bad guy. If the situation was reversed, you would be in my stomach and I would be outside destroying the village with a smile on my face. The Kyuubi said with a large toothy grin on his furry face. The smile dropped off of Naruto's whiskered face as he shook his head. Of course you would. He said as the landscape changed to the forest outside of the rebuilt Konoha. There's people inside now, have fun I left you a surprise. The blonde said before he vanished from his mindscape. Back in reality, the blonde opened his eyes to notice somebody sitting on his stomach. Every time I talk to my furry friend, you're in my face. Why is that? Naruto asked the sister of Kakashi. Sukino smiled at the blonde and shrugged her shoulders. I don't know. I came to the gate and saw you on top and when I called your name, you didn't respond. Sukino said with a pout. So you just decided to invade my personal bubble? He asked as she smiled and nodded her head. He rolled his eyes and poked her in the side. Can you get off me now, you're not exactly light as a he tried to finish, but a finger to his lip stopped him. You're lucky I stopped you in time. If you had finished, I would have been forced to slap you and I don't want to slap this adorable face. The Jonin said before caressing the blonde's cheek. Naruto rolled his eyes and looked at the girl. Are you a clone or the real thing this time? He asked with an inquisitive tone. The real thing, why? She asked looking at him. No reason. Naruto said with a grin as the duo suddenly disappeared. Meanwhile Naruto's team had arrived at the gate a few seconds before he disappeared. Where the hell is Naruto going? Kiba asked before Kurenai tapped him on the head. The better question is, who was that with him? Sakura asked with an annoyed tone. More annoyed than the others would have expected. I didn't get that good of a look before they vanished. All I seen was a black Jonin flak jacket, so her rank is obvious. Though that was the first time I've seen her, though there can't be too many people wearing a black flak jacket. Kurenai answered before the blonde returned just as fast, in front of them. Hey team, I was waiting for you. I see sensei already sealed your things for you, so let's get going. Naruto said with a quick smile before turning around. Wait, hold up. Who was that? How do you keep moving so fast? Why was she sitting on your stomach? Kiba continued to fire off before Kurenai wrapped a hand around his mouth. That's enough Kiba-kun. All questions will be answered on the road, right Naruto-kun? Kurenai ordered sternly staring at Naruto. The blonde flashed a foxy grin at them as he nodded. Yeah sure, no problem. He said before Kurenai released Kiba. The Inyazuka walked up to the blonde, the small scent of her perfume entering his nostrils. How long was she on you, her scents all over you? He asked before Sakura grabbed onto his collar. Enough Kiba, can we just do this mission already? She asked before Kurenai nodded. You're right. Enough lounging about, we got work to do. She said, her tone, one that brought instant attention to her. Team 7, let's head out. Hi. They yelled in unison before they all ran out of the village. SNSN. An hour passed before Sakura cleared her throat. So now that we're on the road now she trailed off before locking eyes with Naruto. Who was she? She asked as Naruto smiled. That was Sukino Haddock, adoptive sister of Kakashi Haddock. We're birthday buddies. He responded, his smile growing. Smells like the truth to me. How about answering why she was sitting on you? Kiba asked as he continued to leap from tree to tree. Naruto scoffed at the question. That's really none of your business, dog breath. Just be glad that I told you who she was. The blonde quipped, glancing at the Inuzuka on the other side of him. Easy now, Naruto-kun. Your teammates are only curious, you are the enigma of the team. Though, I for one, would like to know about your speed. How are you able to move so fast? The other times I've chalked it up to a simple shunshin mixed with ninjutsu. But what I just saw an hour ago was too fast for either. As your sensei and mission leader, I need to know the abilities of the shinobi and kunoichi. I need to watch my back. Kurenai said, causing the entire team to be quiet. Naruto kept his eyes trained on the environment in front of him. I guess she has a point there. Plus, it's better for them to be surprised now than in the middle of a fight where it could potentially cause them an injury. Naruto reasoned with himself as he mentally nodded to himself. Before Kurenai or any of the others could make a sound, he spoke up. I have a bloodline called Jinten, Swift Release. It allows me to move at a speed comparable to the Yondaime Hokage's Hirashin. Well, not that fast, but like that. I've had it since I was born, but had knowledge of it by the time I turned 4. I didn't fully understand it then, but it really helped out whenever I got in trouble for stealing something. Naruto said, looking at his team. The surprise on their faces wasn't surprising. It was more like they were piecing things together. Speed couldn't really be the reason you're as strong as you are now. Kiba said as Naruto nodded his head. You're right, that alone isn't why I'm strong. I'm strong because I've been training since I was. The blonde trailed off, thinking of the age. He really didn't know if he should count the time when Danzo trained him. He could say 9, but then that wouldn't account for the time it would take to get his skills. Also, since he was stronger than the average genin at 8. Well, I guess you could say it's the reason. Without it, I wouldn't have any hope. Because I could get away from crimes, I thought I might as well learn how to protect myself just in case I was caught. So I spied on a bunch of training grounds. The first thing I learned was chakra control, so I tried to consciously locate my chakra, which was rather easy. Naruto explained before telling them about the importance of chakra control and how hard it was for him to properly control it. Even now I'm working on controlling my chakra. The weight seals I have on my ankles need a steady supply, a very small supply, but a steady supply nonetheless. If I flood it on accident, I'm going down. Naruto said with a nervous chuckle, since it's happened a few times. Alright, that's enough, Naruto-kun. We understand now. Kurenai said as Naruto smiled at her. You guys were right. It's not fair for me to be holding out on things like that. To function properly, we need an in-depth perspective of each other's abilities. That's how the Ino Shikacho formation became famous. They know each other's abilities and trust each other with their lives. I have a feeling we can beat them in that department. Naruto said with confidence. Really? Sakura asked, being the bookworm of the team, she had incredible knowledge of that particular team. Of course, Sakura-chan. You have the potential to become both a master medic and a genjutsu master. Kiba is our tracker and ruthless assault guy. And me, well, I can do anything and everything. He said cockily. Easy, Naruto-kun. We don't have room for arrogance on this team. Kurenai warned the blonde. Naruto chuckled as he looked into his sensei's crimson eyes. Sorry, sensei. I'll behave. Naruto said before silence followed. That silence lasted another hour until the team saw the village in their sights. Finally we arrived at the village. Sakura said as she sighed in happiness. The village in front of them, Tenzaku Town. I know what you mean, that took forever. Kiba agreed with a sigh of happiness as well. Calm down, you two. We only spent 2.5 hours running. I've made you two run more than that before. Kurenai said, laying a hand on each of their heads. Sorry, sensei, but 2 weeks isn't enough for me to become as physically fit as Naruto. Sakura said before blushing and looking at Naruto. I mean any other shinobi. She tried to cover up before Naruto smirked. I knew you were playing hard to get Sakura-chan. Naruto said before Sakura hit him upside his head. He allowed it and simply laughed it off. I'll take the hint, Sakura-chan, not in front of the team. The blonde added before Sakura swung again. Naruto moved out of the way and looked at Kurenai. That woman we're looking for is named Asaki Yamasuki. Her husband has been missing for a day now. Let's find her and get the details. The blonde said quickly, remembering what the scroll said earlier. Kurenai nodded and turned to Kiba. That's where you come in, Kiba. The jonin said as she handed the preteen the scroll. Kiba smiled and took the scroll and crouched to Akamaru's level. She wrote in the scroll, so her scent should be on it. The Inuzuka muttered as he and Akamaru took a few whiffs. Found yours, Sensei. Naruto's Arukism, got it. Kiba said with a large smile as the white dog yapped in happiness. Then it's settled, let's go team. Sakura said quickly as everyone bounded into the village, following Kiba's lead. The group took to the roofs and quickened the pace. How much further, Kiba? Kurenai asked as the Inuzuka turned his head. We're here. He responded as they dropped down in front of a large 2-story building. If they had to guess, it was 4-bedroom, 2-bath. Nice house. Sakura commented upon noticing the apple tree in the yard. Eh? The blonde said as he and the others walked to the front door. After knocking on it and waiting a few minutes, a woman with brown hair, blue eyes and light pink lipstick opened the door. She was a little shorter than Kurenai and only had a modest B-cup bust. All in all, she looked like an older Sakura without the pink hair. She was wearing a simple, light blue dress with white flower petals on the left side of it. "Hello, are you the leaf ninja sent to help me?" she asked, eyeing their headbands. "Of course, lady," Kiba said, crossing his arms. Kurenai sighed and walked in front of her students. "Sorry we're late, ma'am. Would you mind telling us everything that happened?" Kurenai asked with a soft face. Asaki nodded and motioned for the team to enter the house. "Of course, please come in. Would you like tea? Water?" she asked briskly, walking to the kitchen. "Sorry about the mess, the kids have been rather messy lately." She apologized as clothes and toys were scattered around the living room. "Don't worry about anything, Asaki-san. Please tell us about the details of your husband's situation," Naruto said, putting his hands in his pockets. "Where are the kids at?" Sakura asked with a few blinks in thought. Asaki stopped heating the tea kettle she had on the stove and quickly walked back into the living room. "I had their older brother take them to the backyard to play," she said as she expertly weaved through the scattered toys and sat on the couch. After smoothing her dress, she looked at the crimson-eyed Jonin. "About a week ago, Mizuki and I had an argument about his addiction. He likes to gamble and has always brought in a sufficient amount of money because of his job as a nurse at the hospital a quarter of a mile away. At first I was ignorant of his addiction, but when his luck ran out a month ago and I found our joint account nearly drained, I went ballistic," she said, balling up her fists a little. "Let me guess, he begged you to let him try to win the money back. You gave in and put out another mortgage on the house?" Naruto asked with narrowed eyes. The wife looked at the blonde preteen with surprise in her eyes. "Yeah. How'd you know?" "I guess," the blonde muttered as he looked into the wife's eyes. "When exactly did he disappear?" "He disappeared 2 days ago. Everything seemed alright that morning, but he didn't return home that night. I didn't worry because he's a doctor, so I just assumed he was on call. But when he didn't return home the next day, I scrounged together all the money I had and made this a problem that hopefully you can solve for me." Naruto nodded and Sakura spoke up. "I need to know one thing," she said, getting the attention of the worried wife. "Which casino did your husband frequent?" she asked. Asaki bit into the nail on her right thumb and thought. "I think Prime Fire, to the west," she said, pointing west. "I know the place. Mother's informed me about the Rings crime syndicate that operates in that casino," Kiba said, narrowing his eyes in thought. "Wow, that's an incredible mom you've got there, Kiba," Naruto said with a chuckle as Kiba growled at him. "Watch what you say, blondie," he growled out through clenched teeth. Yeah. I know all about the Rings. They work in opium and prostitution. The boss, simply named Boss, is a Jonin-level missing nin from Kurigakure that likes to break bones for fun," Naruto said, crossing his arms. "How the hell do you know that?" Kiba exclaimed in confusion, causing the blonde to smirk. "When you're as fast as I am, getting in and out of the village is a cinch. I once robbed their vault for a few 100,000 ryo, I didn't want much," he said as he got a few weird looks from everyone. "What, I couldn't exactly do that in Konoha, I live there," he said, blushing in embarrassment. "I kind of forgot about the price I have on my head in this town until now. If I know Boss, then he probably already knows I'm here. He has a few spies all over the town." Kurenai sighed and laid both of her hands on Naruto's head and pushed down a little. "Well dang, Naruto-kun, you're more of a troublemaker than your file suggested. Apologies, Kurenai-sensei. I got bored easily back then. Plus now, I can easily wipe out the organization if you want me to," Naruto said as Kurenai pushed a little more. "We're not authorized to go on a killing spree. This was only supposed to be a search and rescue, now we have to do with an entire syndicate." Kurenai sighed, leaning against her blonde student. "And self-defense then. Plus, this is still a search and rescue mission. Judging from the picture on the wall, he's a big male with black hair, brown eyes and a thin mustache. Kiba, find his scent and we'll go hunting. Sakura could stay here and protect Asaki just in case Boss sends guys here to pick her up. I'm surprised he hasn't done that yet," Naruto said, looking at Sakura. Sakura was about to protest when Kiba spoke up. "Don't worry, Sakura, the only heavy hitter they have is Boss. The rest are weak, Genin-level bandits. Mother told me that as well. She just didn't know about the main man being a missing nin from Kiri," Kiba said, causing the pincat to take out a kunai and swirl it on her finger. "That's the information I needed," she said with a small smile, causing the boys to smile. You coming, sensei? The blonde asked, vanishing from under his sensei to join Kiba near the door. Kurenai crossed her arms under her breasts and sighed. Of course. A teacher's job is to protect her students from doing anything reckless and stupid. It's too late for you, but Kiba is still salvageable. She said, causing Naruto to clutch, playfully, at his chest. Oh sensei, why? The blonde questioned dramatically, as Kiba laughed in the background. That's enough with the theatrics, Naruto-kun. We'll be back in a few hours. Sakura-chan, keep the fort intact and everyone safe until we get back. Kurenai ordered as the pink cat nodded and twirled her kunai some more. Nothing I can't handle. She said with a serious expression. That's what I expect from a kunoichi. The raven-haired Jonin responded with a nod. Alright boys, let's find this husband. Hi, sensei. Naruto and Kiba exclaimed as they took to the roofs. SNSN. Minutes later and the trio arrived at the casino and immediately they noticed the crowd in front. That is a lot of guards. Kiba softly whistled in amazement. There were good 20 guards in front, on the sides and even a few on top of the casino. I find it hard to believe that's all for you. Kiba said, looking over at a sheepish-looking Naruto. Why you looking like that? What else did you do? The blonde grinned nervously as Kurenai's eyes also trained on him. I might have killed half a dozen of their numbers and left boss with only one good eye. The blonde said slowly and softly. Kurenai groaned and poked Naruto in the back of the head a few times. You and me are going to have a long talk when we get home. You're going to tell me everything I want to know. She ordered as Naruto looked down, a little ashamed, and didn't know why. Just then boss came from the building with a young man with slicked back, black hair. He had Tusei hooked onto his belt and he was wearing a plain white shirt with white and blue camouflage pants. He's new. The blonde muttered as he said something things they couldn't really hear. Most of the guards took out a kunai, but mostly stayed still. They know we're here. Kiba said, his ears not lying to him. We really need to get somewhere where there's not a lot of civilians, otherwise they have the advantage. Kiba spoke quickly as they double-timed it in the opposite direction. The blonde stayed behind and, true enough, they all began chasing them. Well damn, he's right. He muttered before following the others. When he caught up he looked directly at Kurenai. The new guy's a censor, and a damn good one. I had my signature down to less than a civilian has. The blonde complained before a few kunai whizzed by his ear. I don't think it mattered. We were 3 people on a roof in a town where nobody is on the roofs. Kurenai said, turning her body and deflecting a few kunai before righting herself and catching up to the boys. Our best course of action is to follow Kiba's plan and get to the open field behind the castle. She said as Naruto weaved through a few hand seals and blew out a few air bullets. Let's just hope they don't decide to collect Asaki as a bargaining chip. That could turn ugly, depending on the amount they send. Naruto said as they quickened the pace. Minutes later they arrived at the field and only waiting a few seconds before their pursuers landed around them. Naruto Uzumaki, that's all we're here for. Give us the boy and you can live. Well, the woman can live, she'll make a fine toy for my clients. Boss said with an eye patch over his left eye. I'm sorry boss, but I'll have to decline that offer. I have one better. How about I kill you and we go home? Naruto said with a smirk. Or I can take the other eye. It's really your choice. Boss walked forward a little. He was wearing a black suit with a white undershirt and a dark blue tie. On his right ring finger, he had a large ring with a sapphire gem. On his right index finger, he had a gold ring with a few diamonds scattered on the large face. He even had a small pinky ring on his left hand with a silver band and a single diamond. It had a large R engraved on the diamond, signifying the amount it must have cost. His brown hair was short and spiky, if Naruto remembered, then a large scar was going up from the left eye all the way to the middle of the head. It was really a miracle the man survived the explosion at all. For one so young, you seem rather cocky and sure of yourself. You're surrounded by more men than your little mind can count. I offered you a solid business deal, one-time offer only. Turn back on the deal and I'm going to have to kill you slowly instead of quickly. Boss said before Naruto smirked. Sorry boss, but I don't really think you're fast enough to touch me. So no deal. The blonde responded before Kiba smirked too and quickly fed Akamaru a soldier pill, turning his fur red. That's my cue. He muttered softly as he formed a ram seal and enveloped his body in chakra. Giju Ninpo. Shikyaku no Jutsu. Ninja art beast mimicry. All fours technique. Let's go Akamaru. Kiba exclaimed as his appearance became more feral and Akamaru hopped on his back and quickly transformed into another copy of Kiba, albeit even more feral looking. The two transformed Inuzukas quickly attacked with their signature Gitsuga, scattering the enemy opposition. Kurenai-sensei, you could handle the censor guy, boss wants me. Naruto said before Kurenai could order him to do the opposite. I would listen to the boy ma'am. Don't worry, Taka takes care of the ladies. He won't damage you that much, he'll just add a few more holes in your body. Boss said with a chuckle as Kurenai glared at him. "Go on sensei. Plus, our original mission should be coming to a close soon." Naruto said as Kurenai reluctantly nodded and hopped out of the way. "I always seem to forget I can make shadow clones." The blonde thought out loud as he formed a clone that disappeared faster than he appeared. Naruto smirked as boss slowly removed his suit jacket and tie. "Shall we, boss?" "We shall, I know you'll be surprised with what I learned since our last meeting." He responded while unbuttoning his shirt, revealing the vest underneath. "As will you," Naruto said, dropping in a stance. "But Sakura." Sakura sat on the arm of the couch with a bored expression. She had Asaki bring in the kids and had them placed in the living room where she could keep her eye on her. "I spy with my little eye," something she trailed off, moving her eyes around quickly for something for her eye to spy. "Blue," she said as the three kids sat on the floor in front of her. It was one 15-year-old boy with black hair and blue eyes. And twin boys, at the age of 5. With light brown hair and light brown eyes. "Mama's dress." The twin boys yelled in unison, pointing at their mother sitting on the chair Sakura was on. "Nope." The pincat responded with a monotonous voice. "Your headband?" The older brother questioned as Sakura shook her head. Sakura sighed before she heard something. "SHH." She quickly sounded as everyone quieted down. She smiled mentally as she retrieved the kunai back from her pouch. She widened her senses and felt 2 signatures outside. "We have company. Everyone upstairs, quickly and quietly." She softly ordered as Asaki and the older brother each grabbed a twin and hightailed it upstairs and quickly and quietly as they could. "It's Nai-san's eyes." One of the boys exclaimed happily before a flurry of kunai and shuriken crashed into the house. Sakura cursed and got down, narrowly avoiding the onslaught. Before the genin could rise back to her feet, the door was kicked in. She responded quick and threw her kunai at the man, her projectile landing directly in the middle of his chest. As the man fell backwards in pain, the other man quickly entered through the destroyed doorway. He had white hair and a scar going across his forehead. He was dressed in a cheap dark blue suit. "You killed my brother, you bitch," he yelled, charging at the pincat. The two men looked exactly the same, meaning they were obviously twins. Sakura had a scared expression as she apologized to the man and quickly dodged his kunai swipes. "You should be scared, you bitch," he yelled, seeing Sakura's expression. The pincat's expression changed to a smirk. "Who said I was scared?" she said before flying through a few hand seals, stepped into his guard and striking the man in his stomach. In the time when he was holding onto his stomach, the pincat jumped onto the living room roof and landing behind him. He turned his head to look at the young girl and swore he could see 3 of her. "What the hell did you do to me?" Sakura looked at him with a smirk on her face. "Wow, he must be really weak if he doesn't know what a genjutsu is," she thought before running at the man. The man acted fast and threw a kunai at the middle girl, figuring she had to be the real one. He was disappointed when his projectile went right through the girl. Sakura ran up the couch and jumped and planted both of her feet into the man's head. She quickly kicked off and landed in front of him before swinging for a punch into his face again. The man saw the attack coming. He actually saw 2 fists, one in front of the other, but he didn't know which were the real fist. He dodged the first fist and was surprised when the second fist connected with his jaw. From then every other strike Sakura threw was connected and she threw 5 more before the last one connected with the man's throat, a kunai suddenly appearing between her fingers. It was safe to say the man was dead after that. "No. My brother." A scream was heard behind Sakura as the first man shakily stood to his feet. Blood was flowing slowly from his chest. The kunai didn't hit his heart, but an artery was punctured. He dropped back to his knees and reached for his dead brother before falling down, now fully dead, the kunai driving deeper into his chest. Sakura stood shocked at her first 2 kills. She looked at both the brothers and hugged herself. "That was more than I imagined." She muttered to herself as reality sunk in and the adrenaline quickly left her body. Behind the castle, Kiba and Akamaru was faced against a dozen guards. He was confident in his speed and overall ruthlessness to come out on top. That and he had a fearful Akamaru on his side, so he wasn't really alone in this fight. "Let's show them the power of the Inuzuka clan, Akamaru," Kiba said as the other Kiba growled and brandished his claws. After that was said, the guards threw a few kunai at the duo, which they avoided easily. "He's just a kid. Don't lose your resolve," one of the guards yelled before charging at one of the Kibas. If Kiba's learned anything in the time he spent with Naruto, it's that he should use feints as much as he can. So the Inuzuka dashed to the right, causing the man to look that way, unaware of Akamaru speeding towards his throat. After the slash, the man dropped to his knees, blood spewing from his neck. "Nice one, Akamaru," Kiba said as a guard appeared in front of him. He skidded to a stop and ducked under the man's quick katana slash. He rose his head and slashed at the katana arm, making 3 large gashes. After that he grabbed the arm and used chakra to help throw the man into another. After they crashed into each other he quickly sped toward them and spun into a simple tsuga. After he tore through both of them he came to a stop and extended his hand. Akamaru grabbed onto it and Kiba spun and threw Akamaru into another person who also did a simple tsuga. Without even looking at Akamaru, Kiba quickly dug into his ninja pouch and took out 2 kunai with exploding tags on them. He threw them in opposite directions and only ignited one of them. After one of the explosions took out 2 people, the others laughed. "This one's a dud, guys." One of the guards said, picking up the kunai to use it as a weapon. Kiba smirked and Akamaru put his fingers in a ram seal to ignite the tag, causing it to explode and take out 2 more. With only 4 more guards, they decided that the kid was better than they thought. Akamaru joined Kiba and his transformation ended and his fur returned to being white. Kiba's appearance also returned to normal as the chakra returned to his body as he stood, fully, to his feet. "Damn Akamaru, we used too much chakra and didn't even take all of them out." Kiba muttered to his partner, who whimpered softly. "We're gonna have to do this the old-fashioned way," he said, removing a kunai from each of his pouches. SNSN. Hiranai held a kunai in a reverse grip as she faced the sensor ninja. With him being a sensor and being so adept at detecting chakra, made it hard for her to put him under Jinjutsu. "Unless I try a little Naruto magic," she thought before weaving through seals before slamming her hands on the ground. Doten. Sokinashi no Shai. Bottomless death. Instantly the technique washed over the man. He looked around, finding himself falling into a very dark pit. He quickly formed the ram seal and felt the Jinjutsu leave his system. Except he was still falling. He looked around again, but before he could do anything his body fell onto the spikes at the bottom of the pit. Hiranai walked to the edge of the pit she made and looked down. "Took me a week to get that down. Glad to see it's efficient," she muttered before looking in both of the boys' directions. Naruto was alright, having fun dodging boss's attacks. Kiba on the other hand just got knocked a few meters away. She gasped a little and quickly went to assist her student. As she ran over she took a deep breath as another kunai appeared behind her. She threw a kunai at the first guard, getting the attention of the other 3 when the first guard died. Hiranai moved faster and simply began weaving through the bodies. Kiba's eyes widened as he watched as the guards tried to block or dodge the first kunai's attack before the one behind her simply began slashing into the guards. If what he knew from watching Naruto train Sakura, then his sensei just did the illusion fist technique. A mix of Jinjutsu and Taijutsu. Seeing it used by an expert is far better than by a novice. Kiba gasped as he began petting Akamaru absent-mindedly. The first kunai vanished into the air while the real kunai tossed a bloody kunai to the ground. "Are you alright, Kiba-kun?" Kunai asked, looking at the cuts on the preteen's shirt and arms. "I'm alright, sensei, just a few cuts and bruises," he said, censoring his wincing while he stood to his feet. "Nothing Sakura can't cure," he said before Kunai sighed at his macho act. "It's alright to be hurt, Kiba. Don't act like you're alright when it's just us," she said, walking over to him and unsealing a first aid kit. "I'll fix you up before your wounds could get infected," she said softly. SNSN. Naruto was having the time of his life. He may only be a genin, but this jonin couldn't lay a finger on him. "What's wrong, boss? I thought you would have gotten a little faster since 2 years ago. You're still the same old slow bastard who barely survived crossing paths with me." Naruto goaded with a smile on his face, his hands in his pockets. "Stop getting cocky, brat," the man yelled before jumped back and weaving through a few hand seals and slamming his hands on the ground. Naruto looked on with the same smile before a sealing array appeared on the ground. Then the man began pulling out a large halberd. Naruto whistled softly at the sheer size of the weapon. "Kiri and their weapons, crazy people," he muttered before unsheathing his ninja too. "Are you compensating for something?" Naruto asked after the Kyuubi told what to say. Boss clenched his weapon tighter and grit his teeth in anger. "I'm going to kill you," he yelled as he swung his weapon in a large arc, making lightning appear from the arc. "That's a new one." Naruto whistled again as he swiftly evaded the attack. "Okay, I'm tired of looking at your face. Honestly, sometimes I hate my speed. It makes everything so dull," Naruto said as he casually began softly tapping the ball of his right foot on the ground. Boss growled in annoyance and swung his halberd again, making more lightning arc its way towards Naruto. The lightning harmlessly went through Naruto as another blonde appeared slightly to the left. "Hitting my afterimage is only entertaining when you're not doing the same thing over and over again," Naruto commented, still tapping the ball of his right foot with a smile on his face. "Then how about I do this?" he said as he stabbed his halberd into the ground and began making hand seals. Suiton. Kawasozo. River creation, the water deep in the ground, quickly rose to the surface in a moat-like fashion around boss. As he rose back to his full height, he went through more seals. Suiton. Yumi Rivuasan. Sea Leviathan. After that, water began swirling and rising up before forming a large sea monster's maw. Sharp rows of teeth were inside of his mouth, and even where the nose was supposed to be, there was another mouth with smaller, but equally sharp rows of teeth. Large fins were on both sides of its face with its eyes being bright yellow and slitted like all reptilians. Boss grabbed his halberd and placed it in the water as electricity coursed through the already dangerous monster. The strongest S-rank technique Suiton technique in the entire elemental nations is staring you down. You've had your chance to make this easy, now you must die. Boss said with maniacal laughter. Naruto watched with wide eyes as he nearly stopped tapping his foot. That's too cool. I may not have the Sharingan, but my eyes still picked up which seals you used. I need to work on gaining a water affinity. Naruto mused with a smile as he allowed lightning to course through his blade. It's too bad I won't be able to see the full potential of the technique. I've finished the preparations Kazoku. Light speed, Naruto said casually as he blinked out of existence before reappearing on the other side of the field, near his teammates. He dropped to his knees and hacked up a few globs of blood. Naruto-kun. Kiba and Kurenai yelled respectively as they ran to him. Naruto coughed another glob of blood before looking at his ninja too. The lightning around it completely disappeared before the metal shattered. Mixing your Jinten bloodline with the Kazoku technique did a major number on your body and your chakra coils. If it wasn't for me, you would be coughing up pieces of your heart, lungs and maybe even your kidneys. Not to mention your bones are not fully capable of handling such speeds. That mixture is a real kinjutsu until you can control my chakra to coat your bones. Kyuubi berated the blonde for going overboard when there was no reason to. Kurenai held the blonde's head up and saw a bit of blood leaking from his eyes, ears, nose and mouth. "Oh Naruto-kun, what happened?" she asked with a concerned tone. "Naruto, what did you do to the boss guy? He's just standing there with that weird water creature thing," Kiba said looking at the blonde's opponents. They were as still as statues. Naruto looked back and smiled softly. "Isen Kato. 1,000 cuts," he muttered as an explosion of blood and water erupted followed his words. Even with the sheer distance between the explosion and the team, about 200 feet, if they were a few feet closer, they would have gotten wet with blood and water. "Just my strongest technique against his," Naruto said before a big piece of the halberd flew towards them and landed right next to them. The piece was still bigger than the blonde. "I don't think you needed to do all of that to win the fight. I've known you for 2 weeks and I can already see that you could take the Jonin test and easily pass it. Though you have a lot to learn on holding back when it's needed," Kurenai said with a soft smile before kissing Naruto's clean forehead protector. "Well sensei, I hope you're up to carrying me back to town, I can't move my body at all. And I need someone that's uninjured to transport me," Naruto said turning his head to look at Kiba while simultaneously cancelling his weight seals. "I wouldn't want to carry you anyway," Kiba said with a smirk. "Plus, this could be my time to finally get back at you for always thinking about my mother," Kiba said with a devious grin. The blonde gulped and cleared his throat. "Okay, look Kiba, I was just playing those times. Those was jokes," he said only able to move his head. Kurenai sighed and picked the blonde up, bridal style. "You boys are the reason I drink," she muttered out loudly as Kiba tried to wet Willy the blonde. "Not while I'm holding him," she said quickly moving the blonde out of the way. "Yeah, but you still love me," Naruto said with a smile as he looked at Kurenai's face while cradling his head into her bosom. Kurenai's face went into a blank, stoic expression before she simply dropped the blonde. "It's open season Kiba-kun," she said as Naruto groaned in pain. The Inyazuka cheered and inched his finger closer and closer to Naruto's ear while Akamaru happily barked from the boy's head. "Kiba, wait. Wait, Kiba, don't. Kurenai-sensei, stop him. Please." Naruto pleaded before the saliva-covered finger completely entered the blonde's ear. "No," he yelled in disgust. SNSN. Kurenai and her students returned to the house to find the front of it filled with kunai-sized holes. A trail of blood led to the backyard where Sakura stood with a shovel and was busy burying 2 bodies. "Sakura-chan, are you alright?" Kurenai asked seeing Sakura's downtrodden expression. The pincat rose her head and looked at her sensei and tears appeared at the corner of her eyes. "Yes sensei, they just attacked out of nowhere. If I hadn't received any training I would be dead instead. Thank you sensei, thank you so very much." Sakura hysterically spoke as she ran up to the raven-haired woman and wrapped her in a hug. "This is still only the beginning Sakura," Naruto said from Kiba's shoulders, who was carrying him in a standard fireman's carry. Just then another blonde appeared with Mizuki over his shoulders, slung and unconscious. "Mission accomplished boss," the clone said as Naruto nodded. The clone laid the man against the wall and turned to back to the original blonde. "What happened to you?" he asked with a disbelieving tone. "Just a minor mistake on my part." Naruto chuckled as Kiba laid him against the wall as well. "Could you create more clones and fix the house up? It shouldn't take long if you make a few dozen," Naruto propositioned as the clone nodded and put his fingers in a cross seal. Instantly 1 dozen clone filled the area. "Ready for repairs," they said in unison before they began cleaning the place up before they could begin their reconstruction of the house. "Meanwhile, while they're working on the house, we can go to a hotel and rest. It's a good thing we all packed for a week, cause we'll be here for a while. Kurenai said as everyone nodded in a tired manner. Kurenai turned to Sakura, who unwrapped her arms from around her waist. Sakura, gather Sasuke and her children, and we'll head to the nearest hotel. She said with a soft smile as Sakura nodded and headed back to the house. 4 days later, Naruto and company stood in front of Asaki's repaired house with smiles on their faces. Again, thank you for everything you've done for this family. Asaki said in the deepest bow she can perform. And thank you for paying us. Kiba said before Sakura hit him upside his head. Alright, I'll stop. He quickly said while holding his head. Don't mind him Asaki-san, I'm glad we got here in time to prevent anything bad to happen. Kurenai replied back with a smile. Thank you Naruto-san for saving me from the bad guys. Mizuki said, bowing to the blonde. Naruto grinned widely as he nodded. Just keep that promise you made me and I doubt I'll have to return here. He said crossing his arms. Mizuki laughed and nodded his head. You don't have to worry about that, I've learned my lesson. I won't be gambling anymore. He said, extending his hand for Naruto. Naruto nodded and shook the man's hand. After a few more goodbyes, Team 7 set off back to their home village.